call to order the special meeting and work session of February 12, 2024 of the School Board of York County. We have a lot of business to discuss tonight, and I'd like to make a special welcome to all of our presenters who are going to be making sure that we're caught up on a lot of different things, and it's going to be a very detailed meeting. Just for people following along at home, I tend to take notes and everything on an agenda. I don't use a script, although I do have the script here, but I tend to flub up if I'm trying to read the script and follow my notes along the same lines. But just wanted to let you know, so if some things aren't quite as smooth, it's because I'm not reading a verbatim script. But I appreciate having the information on here with who's speaking. Dr. Shandor, I believe you have the first presentation for the superintendent's proposed fiscal year 25 budget. Would you please let us know about that?
Thank you, Ms. Fairman, and good evening, board members. Let me... All right. Again, good evening, Ms. Fairman, Ms. Goodwin, and school board members. It's my privilege to present my FY25 proposed budget. Before I begin, I want to thank Mr. Bowen and his finance team, particularly Allison and Beth, for leading this budget cycle for YCSD. I also want to thank our cabinet members, executive leadership team, our principals, school staff, and community members. Everyone participated in this process of providing us information to develop this budget. We have a lot of details to share, so I will ask that you please let us provide all the information before we stop for questions and comments. All right, as you can see, Policy DB drives our budget process and provides the community with my responsibilities to prepare a budget estimate for the following fiscal year. The school board then approves the budget and submits to the appropriating body, which is the Board of Supervisors. This estimate sets up the amount of funds needed for each classification prescribed by the State Board of Education. The budget cycle is a long process. We begin in the early fall with requests from schools and departments. In the early winter, we're working through prioritization of the requests. We gather information and feedback from the community and work through the spring for board approval and adoption of the budget. Again, we accept requests from the schools, departments, and the community. Additionally, we accept and receive all Let's Talk submissions, and we meet with the school board members as well for input. We had over 400 requests this year. However, several of those requests were one-time budget items and not recurring. All in all, we had 225 requests for the operating budget, and that added up to about $6.8 million. Our cabinet decision-making process is driven by the driving principles that you see on the screen. What's best for students, making sure that our decisions are aligned with the mission, vision, core values, and priorities of the school division, making sure that we're taking into account all safety and legal requirements, and making sure that we look at our own budget now, evaluating every position and line item. Now let's look at the budget proposal, beginning with the anticipated revenue. So the state revenue is based on the governor's proposed budget, an increase of 6.9%. This is based on the projected enrollment of 12,966 students. The county administrator has indicated that $2.35 million is the working number for us to build this budget. We're so appreciative of Mr. Bellamy and his team's support. You can come in. There's seats right here.
Thank you.
Yep. For federal funds, I need to emphasize here that with grants such as ESSER expiring, we will have a loss of $1.97 million in federal funds. We always look to identify areas of savings as well. The total amount of expenditure decreases is $4.3 million. This reduction in expenditures plus the addition of new revenue brings the net resources available for this budget to $11.7 million. As you can see on the screen, VRS reduction is about $725,000. Our staff attrition projection number this year is just over $600,000. We have estimated 14.2 vacant custodian, 7 vacant paraeducator, 4 vacant teacher, and 1 vacant bus driver positions. All that is just over $1 million. Finally, as I mentioned, the loss of federal grant funds in the previous slide, we have to note that major line item change under expenditures as well. Mr. Bowen will explain more about adjustments within the budget due to the federal funding cliff later in this presentation. So when we add the savings of VRS, the elimination of the positions, and the reduction in federal expenses, and add our new revenue, our net additional resources is just over $11.7 million. Our primary challenges are student enrollment, recruitment, and retention. As these have been ongoing challenges we've discussed with the community for the last several years, I know you're familiar with these challenges, so I won't spend a great deal of time diving into them again this evening. Our driving questions, this is just a reminder that the decisions we make are aligned to our mission and vision and what's best for students. Also, our decisions they remain aligned to our core values: safety, growth, innovation, and engagement, and integrity. They're also aligned with our 4 budget priorities: collective commitment, budget priorities. How about strategic plan priorities? Thank you. Collective commitment, supportive culture, highly effective talent, and future-ready graduates. So our theory of action states that if we focus on establishing a shared sense of responsibility for student and division outcomes, creating working and learning environments shaped by compassion, respect, and connectedness, supporting and building the capacity of a diverse, dedicated team of leaders, teachers, and staff, and providing a range of educational opportunities to prepare students for their future, then all students and staff will have the confidence to shape their personal course of success. All right, so we'll dive into each of our priorities. Under the collective commitment priority, you can see addressing the areas of focus of communication, outreach, and engagement. Our total investment there is $55,000. So taking a deeper dive into what that actually looks like, we'll be adding, the recommendation in the budget is to add $35,000 for K-12 Insight Let's Talk, which we currently have. That would be an upgrade. And then also for outreach, residential and risk assessment investigator, which is $20,000. And board members, we've had some discussions related to this in one-on-ones and two-on-twos related to this position is more of a contract position that works closely with Kim Snow and Dr. Aaron Butler to make sure that the students who are attending our schools live in York County. All right, our next priority is supportive culture. Under the supportive culture priority, you can see that we're looking to address learning environment, working conditions, and professional growth. Those are our focus areas. The total investment there is $831,000. So again, to dive into this a little bit more, under learning environment, you can see elementary ACC position. This position is actually being converted from one of our ESSER federal grants. Alternative Education Services, Children's Services Act, and Student Connections. And then under learning environment and working conditions, you can see mental health programs. So SOS stands for Signs of Suicide and Care Solace. And those are programs that we've recently have been working with. And we've been sharing some data with the board as well. And then the last item there under furnitures, fixtures, and equipment, of course, all 3 of those impact the learning environment and working conditions. We really didn't have a lot of dollars in those line items, so we wanted to make a increase to those topics. All right, now highly effective talent. So under the highly effective talent priority, you can see the areas of focus there: our compensation package, recruitment, retention, and professional growth. We're really blessed in YCSD to have amazing employees. Everyone in this school division contributes to our success, and our investment in the people who show up every day for students is essential to this budget. We're working during the largest national teacher shortage in history. Additionally, the labor market in our community, state, and country are all struggling to find qualified people. Our efforts to recruit and retain the best people possible in every role is the top priority for me as superintendent. Our teachers and administrators and staff demonstrate their dedication and expertise in providing high-quality instruction and engaging educational experiences to foster student success each and every day. Investing in our team members is an investment in our students' futures and the future of our community. So you can see the going too fast. The compensation package, that is not only salaries, that's salaries and benefits. Recruitment is $800,000, retention would be $50,000, and professional growth is $95,000. So a total investment there of over $9 million. So we'll dive into each of those. So you can see the pay increase for all eligible employees and what that cost is. My recommendation for licensed staff is a 5.5% average increase, average step of 1.5% with a COLA of 4%. A COLA is cost of living adjustment. Non-licensed staff is 5.5%. A step on the non-licensed scale is 1.75%, and you can see the COLA adjustment there would be 3.75%. Finally, for bus drivers and assistants, 5.5%, the 1.5% step, as well as the COLA of 4%. So Mr. Bowen is going to provide some more information related to the quadrennial review adjustments, and actually Dr. Nichols will be explaining a little bit more about that quadrennial process later this evening. Mr. Bowen will also share some information related to the health insurance in just a few minutes. All right, under recruitment, there's some positions here as well. As I mentioned earlier in the presentation, we identified savings by eliminating expenses from more than 20 vacant positions. Those funds will be used for the items on this slide. So you can see we have special education coach, 2 of them, gifted ed teacher, which is an SOQ, standards of quality, that's required, as well as a warehouse supervisor. Also, most notably, custodial positions have been a hard to fill position for us for many, many years. We believe outsourcing a portion of our custodial services will provide support in areas that we've struggled with. Advertising, we're looking at targeting key markets, not only in Hampton Roads, but around Hampton Roads, specifically in military communities. We also continue to struggle with coverage for self-contained classroom teachers and paras, especially for substitutes. So that $50,000 at the bottom, we want to increase the sub rate for these positions for the people who are subbing as the teacher or as the paraeducator. And finally, you'll see under highly effective talent and supportive culture, professional development and tuition reimbursement. All the information on the last 3 slides is an investment in our people and a true effort to recruit and retain the best employees to benefit our students. And that tuition reimbursement, that's really our efforts, and board members, you'll remember these conversations, to really increase our teachers for dual enrollment classes. All right, future ready. So under the future ready graduates priority, addressing the focus areas of high quality instruction, engaging educational experiences, college and career readiness, and life readiness. The total investment there is $818,000. Again, these positions are repurposed from the positions we eliminated, as I shared earlier in the presentation. The additional elementary teachers will be a part of the instruction department's plan to increase daily planning time for elementary teachers. Let me say that one more time. That plan is to help us increase daily planning time for elementary teachers. So if you're an elementary teacher, you should like that part of the presentation. While the literacy coach and paraeducator positions will support the new literacy requirements, and again, board members, we've had discussions about those new literacy requirements. There are stipend positions as well for building-based teacher leaders and staff supporting virtual Virginia students. Again, this was previously funded through ESSER. And the STEM resources at the bottom there, if you recall, we have maker spaces in our classrooms, so we've put in the space and some resources there. What we didn't do we didn't really put a line item in there for consumables. So we want to make sure that we have those in there. We also have travel for curricular competitions. As I shared with board members, we have some really bright students that win competitions, and they'll tell us, hey, in 5 days we have to go to Chicago for world championships of whatever. And we want to make sure, number one, we have some dollars in there to support. The kids do fundraising, the schools contribute, but as a division, we want to certainly make sure we can contribute for our kids there as well. All right, this next slide, our New Horizons Regional Education Center, our contribution this year will be $200,000. The Academic Career Plan portal, so this student academic career plan currently are in paper form, and this software program will place it online where students, staff, and families will have access to it. And then the driver's ed, We have students there who need driver's ed as well, so we want to allocate a .2 position, and I believe you guys got the opportunity to visit YRA last Friday. So this will really help our students. This aligns with our shift from virtual instruction in summer school to ensure all students have in-person driver's education, which I think we could all agree. If you're driving around the community, you want to make sure the kids are ready to roll for that. All right. Lastly, we have safety and operations. There's two two areas of focus there: safety and operations. That total investment is over $818,000. Thank you. I'm reading a lot of numbers tonight. To dive a little deeper there, you can see there is an increased cost for our SROs at a little over $92,000. Requests from multiple schools regarding the software monitoring program. So we had that request from a number of our schools. The next one, athletic trainers, are AEDs, and diabetes training is a part of our safety enhancements and improvements. Also, the tech fund there, that number is $500,000. I know that's a big number, but I wanted to be very clear, that's not just for devices. That's for system upgrades such as switches, servers, essentially for our hardware infrastructure. And the last item on there, operation systems. We use RICOR and Kronos. They're essential programs for the operations of the school division. RICOR is basically our online forms, and if you're a parent, you know that's for online payments. Also, Kronos is for timekeeping and for payroll. All right, so here's sort of a summary of everything that I just said. So basically, for our FY25, this is our strategic investments, and they're broken out by priority area. And then this next slide, you can see an Outlook summary. Basically has all of the items. So you see the total funds available at the top, which is $11.7 million, and then our total expenditures at the bottom. So as you can see from this proposal, we have a balanced budget. So our bottom line for our operating budget is more than $192 million. That's a 3.8 increase from FY24. This budget will enable us to continue moving forward with the work of the school division, specifically accomplishing the priorities in our strategic plan. Mr. Bowen will now finish the presentation with a balance of other funds, health insurance, and the quadrennial review, and some next steps. Mr. Bowen.
Thank you, Dr. Shandor. Madam Chair, members of the board, what we see here on this slide are some other funds that the school division maintains in order to support school operations. We start off with our workers' compensation and health and dental funds. Just as a reminder, we are self-insured in both workers' comp and health and dental, and as part of that process, we need to have a working fund balance, and so we have those funds to maintain the fund balance. Now, what we're seeing here is the appropriation levels. So when we talk about these funds, there's two things that are required for these funds. One, you have to have the appropriation, which is the authorization to spend, but you also have to have a cash balance in order to spend that appropriation. What we're looking at here is just the authorization to spend. We also have a food service fund, which is it's several revenue streams, several federal, state, and local. And when we talk about local, it's what the parents or what the students pay for their meals. And so those funds have to be captured in a food service fund. And these funds roll over from year to year. And last is our technology reserve fund. This fund was created at the end of 2020 when we were forced into a one-to-one program. And so we didn't have the funds at that time to launch the one-to-one program, so we worked with the county. We also borrowed some money, and we were able to purchase our devices. However, we've been struggling to carve money out of our operating budget to sustain the technology plan, not just the one-to-one, but as Dr. Shandor said, the overall infrastructure of the plan. And that's why we had that $500,000 that's going to be directed to this technology reserve fund. The next thing I want to talk about is health insurance. You saw on the slide there was an increase of $1.135 million for health insurance. This represents a 10% increase. So on Monday, we haven't had our meeting, the big meeting with our consultant. However, I did have a conversation with them, and based on the data that they've looked at, our trend data right now, they're recommending a 10 to 13% increase. So the information we use is we base it on a 10% increase. So I wanted to walk you through just our overall plan and some of the decisions that we've come to. So we have two plans here at the school division. We have Optima Point of Service 250 plan, and that 250 stands for the deductible. So before the health insurance kicks in, the individual is going to pay $250. The family is going to pay $500 before insurance kicks in. Moving to the right, the top of the columns, we have the total monthly cost. This is what it costs for the plan. It's broken out by what YCSD pays, $730, and then what the 12-month employee pays, $111. We also have a number of employees who are biweekly. These are our non-exempt employees, and so they're paid biweekly, and so their premiums are paid on a biweekly basis. The next plan we have is our Equity 3500. This is our high deductible plan. This plan is really beneficial to those that are very healthy or those that are very sickly, because it caps, for those who are extremely sick, it caps the annual amount that you pay for your medical expenses. Also, the numbers that you see there in parentheses beside the employee only and employee plus one child, those are the number of employees that are actually enrolled in those specific plans. So we have a total of 1,146 at this point. Now this is a moving target because as we hire new employees, those numbers will change, and when there are life events, somebody gets married or somebody has a baby, then those plans will change. But as of the time we put this together, it was 1,146 employees, and roughly 95% are in plan number one. So on this next slide, this is the proposed changes for calendar year 2025. To the left here, we see our current rates, and I'll just stick with the upper plan. The EE stands for employee, and then the ER stands for the employer. So currently the employee is paying $111, and what we're proposing is a 10% increase, but it's not just to the employee. What we ended up doing was we factored a 5.5% increase to the employee rate, and the employer picks up the balance. So we're proposing that increase to $117, and then the monthly increase would be $6 to the employee. So $72 for a year. However, because we're on a calendar year plan, those increases won't be felt until December because we pay them a month in advance. So they'll only be paying for 7 months out of the 12 months for fiscal year 25. So instead of paying $72, what we'll end up paying is $42. That will be the net cost, the net increase to the employee-only plan on the point of service 250. And so you can see here the far right column, it's $13 a month for the employee plus child, $22 for the employee plus spouse, and $27 for family. So then once we come up with this plan, we looked then to compare our proposed plan to our competitors. We look at our regional school divisions. Now something here to point out is two things. One, these are our proposed 25 rates. What we're comparing ourselves to is the 24 rates of Newport News, Hampton, and Williamsburg, James City County. They're working through their budget process, so we don't have this information, although we know that a lot of school divisions are continue to struggle with health insurance increases. The other thing here to note is that I'd say the devil's in the details. Because if you look at ours is $250 deductible. If you look at Newport News doesn't have a deductible for this plan. However, their copays are $35.50, where ours are $20.40. So that's just one small change. However, there's some other changes. Their maximum out-of-pocket for our plan is $3,500 for an individual and $7,000 for a family. For Newport News, it's $4,750 and $9,000. So there's things that you can do with the plan design itself to get your numbers lower, and that's what they've done. So when you look at the tables here, the only place that we are low, that somebody is lower than us is the employee-only rate for Newport News. At every other line in the top plan, we are better than our neighbors. I will point out for Hampton, we couldn't see their employer cost. They didn't publish that, so we're just showing the employee cost. Next is the quadrennial review. So here, this is an annual process that the school division goes through. And what we're looking here are the adjustments recommended for employees for this year's review. And real quick, 2%, we're proposing a 2% salary scale adjustment to the custodians, cafe workers, and crossing guards. We're also recommending a 2% salary scale adjustment for bus drivers and dispatchers and also bus assistants. Position adjustments, the office clerk positions converted to a secretary 1, so we're eliminating the office clerk position. Everybody who was in as an office clerk has now been moved to a secretary 1. We're also increasing the days for those positions from 185 to 197 for operational support. This is something that we've been trying to do for a number of years because these positions serve critical roles for us in the summer. Where they capture enrollment. And so if they're not there to capture the enrollment, then the data sits and we can't make hiring decisions, staffing decisions until those enrollments are entered into our student information system. Next is our Secretary 2s. We're converting to Secretary 3, so the Secretary 2 positions will be eliminated. On the grade adjustments, the Secretary 1's moving from a 10 to an 11. HR technician is moving from a 12 to a 13. And that basically covers the group review. However, sometimes when we go through the review, it creates compression. So when we moved up the Secretary 1s, we needed to move up the Secretary 3s and the financial secretaries. And then that also forced us to look at the accounts payable and procurement coordinator, and then also the Secretary board clerk position, which we're supposed to move from an 18 to a 20. Dr. Shannon?
All right, we'll finish this up. So you can see our next steps on February 26th. The school board will have a public hearing. March 11th at our next work session. We will bring more information back. Crossover is tomorrow, I believe. Is that correct? So more than likely, everything that we just presented to you with the revenue may change tomorrow. Hopefully in a good way. March 25th will be the school board, that's when you'll adopt the proposed budget, and then May 20th, the school board will adopt the proposed budget. So with that, I believe that's my last one. So if there's any questions or comments, Mr. Bowen and I are available.
A quick question. So Secretary 2 is getting eliminated. Is there like a reason why is that position completely gone, or?
Well, it has to do with the job duties. So we're eliminating that and moving them to a Secretary 3 so we can expect more out of those positions than what they're currently doing. What we're seeing right now is that there is a lot of work being done by both groups, and the Secretary 2s haven't been fairly compensated. At least that's what's come to our attention, and so we need to correct that.
Do you think in the future we're going to need to bring back Secretary 2, or like, we'll be good to go? Like,
It's possible because the work in the schools is getting more complex. Right now, we have the one-to-one program with the devices, and we have some of our secretaries in the schools are working through that process with students who bring in broken devices or devices that aren't charged, and they're having to do exchanges, and they're tracking some inventory. So that's been something that's been added to their plate, and we're working through that through job descriptions and changes. But it's possible that may come back to us down the road, yes.
Mr. Bowen, just so I understand, so you're saying that it's either really more of a one position in terms of what they're doing work-wise, or a 3, it's not really a middle ground?
I'm sorry,
I'm sorry, you're saying that it's really the work for the secretary is either more of a 1 at a basic or an advanced, it's not really a middle ground position, is that right?
Yeah, it's been kind of that middle ground, the Secretary 2 position, but they've been doing more of the Secretary 3 work.
Okay, so we're just kind of bumping.
So we're bumping them,
Yeah.
bump them up.
And to put that in perspective, how many Secretary 2s do we have?
We have 4.
Right. Yeah.
Very small number.
Right.
I have a question on that with converting the office clerk to the Secretary 1. How many positions is that? How many is it affecting?
I want to say it's 9.
I think it's 8.
Office clerks, I'm sorry, it's 13.
Ooh.
13 office clerks.
So it's 13 positions on that. And then I also was kind of concerned. I understand why we had to do the one-to-one with the devices. I mean, that was kind of thrust on us. That was the only way for the students to learn. But as we hopefully are backing off of everyone having a laptop and constantly on the laptops. I'm a little concerned that it looks like we're sustaining the one-to-one. And I'm not talking about the actual platform and setting things up, the actual devices to a student. Why would we continue the one-to-one when the students are back in school and there's more and more data coming out now that being on the computer so much is not good for the students?
That's a great question, and I'm gonna tap into a couple of people, but I will say when we went to the one-to-one, one of the things that we looked at, because we were also looking at space, we collapsed a number of our labs in the schools.
Yep.
We captured those, by collapsing those labs, they became now classrooms. And so to undo the one-to-one would be somewhat of a challenge, because you'd have to create those labs again.
Yeah, I mean, some of our elementary schools had 2 labs. I mean, multiple labs. So we've been able to put off for the last 2 or 3 years why these folks are here tonight to present to us rezoning, because we've been able to collapse those labs. So that was a great help. The other thing I would add, I mean, we can let Ms. Skinner weigh into this. It's really not a matter of I mean, if the board doesn't want us to sustain one-to-one, then you can communicate that to us as a board if that's something you want to do. We will most likely say that's a bad decision, or we would say there's more reasons for why you wouldn't. Ms. Skinner, you can explain this.
I'll give you a good example. First of all, our students are not on devices all day. Those devices are used in very purposeful manners to prepare our students and to give our students access. A good example is writing. When our students take the writing SOL, they're expected to be able to write using a keyboard. Years ago, when we did not have one-to-one devices for our students and they had to go into the lab to do any writing, they would have an experience maybe a couple times, because you had to schedule all those students into the lab in order to do their writing. And they weren't able to fully use the technology to do a full piece of writing. And so now our students can write on daily. They can write anytime that we need them to, and the expectation with integrated reading and writing is that our students will be writing more and more in every class that they're in. We simply don't have lab space to sustain that. We would really be disadvantaging our students if we did not give them an opportunity to be able to write on whenever they need to, history, science, because that's the expectation from the state. That's just one example I can give you. But know that we don't want students on devices all day, but the reality of the world is that students have to come out of high school with the capability of understanding Office and those types of services, or they won't be prepared for their college or career next steps either.
Also, I found that that I gained 2 classrooms in one school and one in another, and like Magruder is overpopulated now. I mean, it is, and to turn those back into computer labs, I mean, we're going to have to build it up.
Yeah, I wasn't looking at doing that. My concern is how long the students are actually on the computers, on their devices throughout the day. Do we have data? And are the teachers told, only, 10% of your class time is on the computer, or what?
I think that varies it varies by school, it varies by subject.
By class.
It varies by class. I mean, it varies there's a number of different variables that play into that. And what I will say is we trust our teachers and our administrators to make sure that our kids are getting what they need. And we've said this in a few meetings, I think in a few one-on-ones and two-on-twos, and Ms. Skinner's saying it again tonight. We do not want our kids on computers all day. However, there are times where it's appropriate, and we gave some examples tonight. I'm sure Mr. Pajovich's children have used IXL before and a few other of our programs for assessments so that our teachers can see exactly where our kids are, so they know exactly what interventions those kids need. So it's difficult to say, how are we going to track the computer use of 13th? I mean, if that's information the board wants, do you really want us to look at 13,256 kids' computer use during the day? Now, in the presentation, I did present some information to software monitoring, so we're going to have a better opportunity to do that.
So that's what is part of that.
Correct.
Okay.
And the Virginia Department of Education does give guidelines, and we work to try to follow those as well.
And I would interject, and I'm sure you could say as well, you were at the one, but you visited the schools. I had the opportunity to visit a couple schools on Friday, and walking around was looking at that, watching to see like how many, am I going to see a bunch of kids, in groups? And I didn't see that at all. I saw a lot of collaboration. I saw nothing in mathematics. I saw a lot of, when it was using the laptop, I saw a lot of good integrative work with it. So I did not witness kids just, it is a concern because we know when the kids leave, they're on their phones and all of that, so they're getting a lot. So of course we wouldn't want to be inundated, but I did not witness that when I was walking around.
I'm glad you said that, because just in the years of me going in and out of schools, I never see the kids all the time on the computer. It's always the teacher up there instructing and interacting, collaborating with the kids. That's what I see all the time. So it's not as much as maybe you would think.
I
Yeah, I
believe
don't
it's
know
the
if you-
online, it was online learning, like from the COVID situation
for
that,
that.
got the kids glued to the
Well, they
screen.
were basically
We as the
living
parents
on
would agree, the minimizing
Yeah.
the time on the screen. But I would testify to Dr. Shandor and testify the technology is necessary for the kids these days. We do have more opportunity to teach them better and greater things in a short period of time. Like you were saying, using the classroom from the other stuff. And I think the software you're proposing, the hardware that's going to help us out understand those things, because I think me as a parent and other parents witness that kids misuse the technology, the computers, for going on YouTube on the hours when they shouldn't be going. And I think that we as a board maybe look into those policies, procedures. How do we limit those use on the school devices in future? But I think technology does help in those, and I don't think we need the discussion is not to get rid of it, but just kind of monitor and reduce the amount.
Exactly.
And I would just add that a lot of the state testing is moving towards digital testing, so there's less paper and pencil. And just reiterate what Dr. Shandor and Mr. Bowen said, this isn't just, the line item is not just for the devices. We have a long history of funding our technology infrastructure with end-of-year funds. That's not a reliable way to fund those
It's not a
and
sustainable
sustain
way.
it well, and to make it consistent. And so that's what we're trying to do.
Thank you.
Okay. Another question I had, if you could go into more of what's done concerning the mental health programs, the SOS, the signs of suicide. I know when I was getting my teaching degree, was required to take child psychology classes to be aware of certain things and to identify if something needed more help with guidance and parents and things like that. What is done here, and I guess my hesitation on this is some of the things I've read over the last couple of years, that it's kind of a blanket lesson, and I'm a little worried about that constantly coming up. We need to make sure that we address the students who are showing signs that that we need to do that, but to have it for all of the students, that's also not a healthy way from what I've read. So can you give a little bit more
So
background
are
on
you
that?
talking about signs of suicide, or are you talking about care solace?
I was looking at because you said signs of suicide is the SOS, and go ahead and bring up the care solace, because I know some people have asked me about that, and I don't know enough about it really to explain.
Yeah, so care solace, I'll start there.
Yeah, and I've shared CareSola's data with you, I believe, in Friday notes, so I've sent that to
Right.
you.
Yeah.
Right.
And I don't know if this is the time or place to dive into deep to every single topic. If we want to talk about budget items, budget topics, we certainly can, and the cost of those. But again, we have 7 other presentations. We'll answer every question you have tonight. But if you want staff to give you information on very high levels of detail, we could certainly bring that back, or I could send that in Friday notes.
Okay.
But we'll do that. We'll respond as to the pleasure of the board.
Bringing it back, I mean, that would be fine with me. It was just kind of, as you were going through this, it just kind of popped up. I was like, oh.
And I would also say that we did several presentations last year, and I think even the year before, that are recorded. So if any of your constituents would like more information about it, we did extensive presentations when we were considering both of those programs, and we could certainly use those, but I'll be happy to provide any other additional information.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions regarding superintendent's proposed budget? Thank you so much, Dr. Shandor.
Sure.
I believe the next thing on our report is capital projects report.
Yep, thank you, Ms. Fairman. And next, we're thinking about Mr. Gearhart, our construction associate director. He had some surgery recently, so we're hoping to get him off the injured reserve. But a very capable backup, hopefully, is Dr. Carroll. So he is going to present the capital projects report this evening. Dr. Carroll.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Shandor, and I'm sorry you're stuck with me. But here is your capital projects report. It's very brief tonight, but let's go ahead and work through it. First of all, we're still working at Seaford Elementary, and so a few things we're still doing there is installing the HVAC roof screens up on the roof. I'll have some pictures for you in a little bit. We did have some issues that we found with football field drainage that was in the back of the school. We were having some sinkholes that were starting, and that was due to years of damaged drainage out there. And that's underway, and we're working on other final punch list items. And we also have a commitment that we're finally going to get Seaford Road paved on March 1. It's going to start, and that should be a pretty quick paving project. So here are the pictures. This is a team building the framework for a screen. And so when you're looking from the street, you're not looking at HVAC units. You're looking at a screen that just kind of blends into the roof a little more. And then here's a picture of the drainage work out near the football field that has begun. And here it is from a different angle, and you can see an inlet moving into the stormwater drainage. Then we go to tab middle, where we're working on HVAC also. And you'll remember that this is a project where we were having some supply chain issues. And I believe we have 49 heat pumps that are involved. And the controls are being installed now. And we've received about half the heat pumps, and the remaining are expected in March. Replacements are happening small groups at a time, and we'll put a good number in over spring break. And we expect those to be finished over the summer. And here's an example of one of those heat pumps. Mount Vernon also is having HVAC replacement. Those control systems are also being placed now. The contractor has all the heat pumps that have to come in on order. Now the project is planned over 2 years for the next 2 summers. However, the contractor plans to complete it over this summer, which will be excellent if we can get there. And then we have the Bruton High roof, and that work has begun. And I got to say, I've got to tip my cap to the contractor there. This is the same group that did York High over the last 2 years. And to help protect academic time, because they're doing a lot of tear off, they're up there at 3:15 in the morning starting the work and trying to get a good 4 hours done before school starts. And I mean, we're including a couple weeks ago when it was the weather was in the teens at night and blowing, the wind was blowing pretty good. So they've been up there doing that and tearing off a lot of insulation, wet insulation. And once again, this was a 2-year project, and they're shooting to get it done this summer. And there's some of the work.
Yikes.
Some of the work to do. And that's what it looks like after they're starting to install new insulation and roof membrane. So the work is underway. And that concludes the capital projects report. I'll do the best I can on any questions you have.
Board, anybody have any questions?
Good job.
Not at all.
No.
Thank you.
He let you off
I'll
easy
call
today.
it.
All righty, next on the agenda is the school calendar.
Yes, thank you. So next we have Ms. Lisa Beasley, who is going to come up and present our school calendar. Dr. Aaron Butler, who is here as well. So we'll give them a moment to transition. All right, Ms. Beasley.
Or Dr. Butler, I'm sorry, I'm not sure who started. One of you. Okay. Madam Chair, members of the board, and Dr. Shandor. Thank you for allowing me and Mrs. Beasley this opportunity to present the 2024-2025 draft school calendar. Per Virginia Code, school divisions are required to develop a school calendar with a minimum of 180 instructional days or 990 instructional hours. In addition, school divisions also must ensure that there are 140 instructional hours per course for high school credit-bearing classes, 560 instructional hours in the 4 core classes at the middle school level, and 680 instructional hours in the 4 academic disciplines at the elementary school level. Back in 2019, the General Assembly amended the Code of Virginia to allow school divisions to start school 14 calendar days prior to Labor Day if they did not already receive a waiver. We were one of those school divisions that did not have a waiver prior to that time, so we were allowed to start. The caveat, however, had to be that if you did start before Labor Day, the Friday prior to that holiday had to be designated as a non-instructional day for students. So as we present the calendar tonight, all of the draft that you're going to see aligns with all the state requirements and the Code of Virginia. During the March 27, 2023 regular session of the school board, there were certain parameters that were approved for the 2014-2025 calendar. As you can see, it was designated that the first day of school would start on Monday, August 26, 2024, that our Thanksgiving break would begin on Wednesday, November the 27th, and run through Friday, November the 29th. Winter break would begin on Monday, December the 23rd, through Friday, January the 3rd, 2025, which would be a 2-week break. And then for spring break, it would start on Monday, April the 7th, through Friday, April the 11th. As the calendar committee worked this year to develop the calendar, our driving principle was how can we develop a calendar which best supports student academic success while meeting state requirements. As part of the process to develop the calendar, we have multiple stakeholders that are involved in that process. As you can see, we have both the regional calendar committee which meets, and then we have a local York County School Division committee. On our local committee, we've had a variety of stakeholders that participated. We have from our teachers at both the elementary, middle, and high schools. We have parent representatives, students, our building administrators, school counselors, clerical staff within our buildings, and then we have school board office staff that assisted. For our regional calendar committee, we work with those school divisions in our immediate area, and that is Hampton, Newport News, Poquoson, Williamsburg, James City County, and Gloucester. Through feedback from the stakeholders, through a couple of different avenues, we were able to get some pretty clear feedback for how we were going to develop the 24-25 calendar. One of the things that they wanted us to place unencumbered work days and early dismissal days at key times during the school year to help with our staff as they completed grades for the interims and also report card times. Our parents were very clear about reducing early dismissal days because it was a disruption to their family life, but also a disruption to instruction. And they asked that if we do have to put in early dismissal days, to please place them on Mondays or Fridays. One of the things that came up that we should maintain equal quarter lengths. So we try to keep it within 45 days each quarter versus having one quarter that would have like 49 days and one that was shorter. And then alignment with the regional calendar because we have several programs that we share as a region, Governor's School and New Horizons. And so I'm now going to turn it over to Mrs. Beasley, who will go through the rest of the presentation and share some updates.
So for the 2024-2025 school year, we anticipate a number of state instructional implications that have impacted the development of our school calendar. These impacts include the implementation of new content standards for English and math, full implementation of the Virginia Literacy Act, or VLA, and the replacement of the PALS assessment with the new Virginia Language and Literacy Screening System, otherwise known as the VALS. Each of these implications requires an enormous amount of training for our staff and planning for full implementation. Additionally, we anticipate textbook adoption occurring for elementary school reading as part of the implementation of the Virginia Literacy Act. So on each of the following slides, I'm going to explain a month-by-month comparison of the 23-24 school calendar as it compares to the 24-25 draft calendar. Please note that on each of the teacher work days, they're marked as TBD. We have a separate committee that comes together that works to develop if these days will be designated as either unencumbered, division, or site-based professional development days. So first, looking at July of this year as compared to July of next year in the draft calendar, July remains the same with our Independence Day holiday occurring on July 4th. In August, we're proposing bringing staff back on Wednesday, August 14th, in order to add an additional division-wide professional development day for staff at the elementary and middle school levels. Additionally, we are proposing that Friday, August 30th, which is the Friday of the Labor Day weekend, be a staff holiday for all employees except for 12-month employees. Returning teachers will work 194 days. New teachers will work 197 days, and this includes 3 days for new teacher orientation, 8 pre-service days, and then 6 days for teacher work days throughout the school year. The September calendar remains consistent. Again, that Labor Day holiday occurring the Monday at the start of the month. October remains consistent with a student holiday. You'll see just the only thing that changed was going from a Monday student holiday to a Friday student holiday. And again, the goal there is to seek balance within the quarters, as that aligns with when interim grades will be due and when interims will be distributed. In the calendar for the 24-25 school year, we're proposing that an additional day for professional development be added as compared to the 23-24 school year calendar. This professional development opportunity will allow staff to participate in continued training or division-wide meetings based off of those new instructional implications that we have coming from the state. Additionally, while Veterans Day is not a student holiday to prevent 2 fragmented weeks, we will continue to strongly encourage our schools to celebrate our military communities and invite families into our schools on Monday, November 11th. Thanksgiving, as Dr. Butler mentioned, will be consistent 3-day break there at the end of November. For December, winter break for the 24-25 school year will be 2 full weeks and 3 weekends, beginning on Monday, December 23rd. As you can see with this year's calendar, winter break was not 2 full weeks and did not include 3 weekends. In January, winter break will continue through Friday, January 3rd. The end of the quarter and semester will be marked with an early dismissal on Friday, January 24th, and a student holiday teacher workday on Monday, January 27th. We've shifted these ever so slightly because of them landing on the same week as Martin Luther King Jr. holiday, again to prevent fragmentation in the calendar. When winter break is 2 full weeks to include 3 weekends, a teacher workday will not be held on the day returning from break, which was the case for this year's school calendar. February remains consistent with the President's Day holiday. The workday on the 23-24 school calendar here in March is on a Tuesday, that's coming up here soon, due to the presidential primary being held on March 5th. Next year, the workday will be on a Monday to align with stakeholder feedback because we won't have that presidential primary. The spring break remains consistent, being the first full week of April. Do note that those dates are a little later than usual, so it is April 7th through April 11th, but that is the first full week of April to be consistent. And the early dismissal immediately prior to the spring break will mark the end of the quarter. May remains consistent with an early dismissal and then the Memorial Day holiday at the end of the month. And in June, as a reminder, this year's student calendar accounts for 178 days. As shared earlier, the goal of the calendar committee and the division was to maintain a 180-day student calendar. So for the 24-25 school year, That is the case with the last day of school being on Wednesday, June 11th. Do note that we have not made a notation here in regards to graduation, as a separate team comes together and works with their vendors to determine where graduation will be held and when it will be held. So thank you for the opportunity to present the 24-25 draft school calendar. Dr. Butler and I are available for questions at this time.
Thank you for doing such a good job. Appreciate it.
It's a lot to accomplish to coordinate the other jurisdictions and. Yeah.
Kids will be happy. On a winter break, it's going to be awesome.
They'll be happy in another couple of years when they'll have 3 full weekends. Isn't that what it is?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see consistency for a couple of years where just because of the nature of winter break, we'll have 2 full weeks and 3 weekends. But when we do land back in a year where we anticipate that we won't be able to accomplish 2 full weeks, 3 weekends, then we'll evaluate that.
Are there any built-in for hurricane days, things like that?
Sure. So
Snow, not that we've had snow.
Yeah.
Hurricane is more
We
reasonable.
don't use the H word or the S word.
No.
and we talk about the calendar.
So we start with 180 school days with the calendar. If we need to miss a day of school because of inclement weather of any variety, then we will fall back on that 990-hour instructional requirement.
Okay.
I work with a member of our IT staff to actually track our instructional hours.
Okay.
And each time we're considering a school closure or an early dismissal or a 2-hour delay, I work with that colleague to automatically adjust those instructional hours. And we far exceed the expectations of the instructional hours. It's been a number of years since we've had to, right,
Yeah.
exactly, think about
Very,
making
very
some
quiet.
schedule changes.
Thanks for
I know everybody's tiptoeing around that.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Or
No, not at all.
Nice job.
Good job.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
And the next on the agenda is non-licensed staff compensation and recruitment. Dr. Shandor.
All right, thank you. We'll let these ladies transition up to the table. So, excuse me, our first presentation for non-licensed staff compensation recruitment is going to be our Associate Director in Human Resources, and that's Dr. Wendy Nichols.
Hi,
So
how are
I'll
you
turn
all?
it over to you.
I'm Vanna over here. I'm having some technology difficulties today.
F9, right? F5, just.
Good evening, Madam Chair, board members, Dr. Shandor. This evening I'm going to be highlighting information from the Human Resource Department in reference to retention and recruitment, specifically compensation for non-licensed staff. Highly effective talent is a priority in our current strategic plan. We strive to attract and retain highly skilled, compassionate, diverse team members by providing personalized, differentiated pathways for professional growth, improvement, and advancement. We have 4 main areas of focus: compensation, recruitment, retention, and professional growth. Human Resources works with other departments in YCSD in order to monitor data so that we make the best decisions for our staff and for our community. Recruitment is something we focus on throughout the year in order to maintain an intentional approach to attracting a targeted number of candidates. Selecting a candidate that's the best fit for each position, offering them employment, and onboarding that new employee. In addition to the in-person events we've hosted this year, we strive to continue to be a destination division by spreading our brand in multiple ways. We have worked with a national branding company over the course of a year, and we have come to a culminating video that I want to share with you. And as we take a look at this, keep in mind and notice that this video is all authentic to York County, all of our staff members, all of our locations. And the reason it took so long to get to this point is because several focus groups were held with different individuals to determine what was so great about York County Public Schools and what did we want to highlight and showcase to others.
Community, the love and support for its community. You definitely feel a part of a family when you come into York County, and that's just why I'm so drawn to it.
The culture in York County School Division is a culture of caring about kids, supportive families, administrators, and leadership who genuinely care about our families and kids and education as a whole.
At the very beginning of my teaching career, I was able to be a part of a military homecoming. It's really important that we have staff and teachers and administrators who understand what those students are going through. It was incredibly special for me to be a part of that military homecoming, especially being a military spouse myself.
I foster student success by having a constant communication with their parents, attending sports events of their interest, and building relationship with the students. The culture at York is to create future-ready graduates.
I was quickly drawn in by the sincere love and support that York County has for education, has for its teachers, and has for its community. My name is Alexia Perkins,
Amy Hunter,
Eileen Rivera,
Aaron McQuillan,
Kelly Lugo, and I teach for the York County School Division.
Yay.
I have grown a lot as a teacher over the years. I have worked with some amazing administrators, teachers, and staff at York County that have helped me grow.
You guys want to watch it again?
It was really good, wasn't it? Wonderful. Yes. Okay. Okay, so I hope you love that as much as we did. Absolutely love all the stories that they told.
Oh, yeah.
And why York County is so important to each of those individuals. So on Saturday, February 3rd, we had our 4th in-person recruiting opportunity. We had our winter job jamboree. We had 98 interviews that day. 47 of them were scheduled, the rest were walk-ins. We are exceptionally proud of that because it was the same day that another school district in our Peninsula region was hosting their job fair at the same time. So we were pretty excited about the turnout that we had. And what you see on the bottom is a breakdown of positions and individuals recommended for hire. And then what we've been doing since is going through vetting references and then looking at anticipated openings and then beginning to get some early offers into those highly qualified candidates. Now we're going to switch over to compensation. In January, Dr. Wright talked to you guys through the licensed salary scale and what we do to maintain competitive compensation. Tonight, I'm going to talk to you a little bit more, well, a lot more on the non-licensed side. So our licensed staff is anyone on the teacher salary scale. And that's reviewed annually. We went through all of those pieces. Now the exception is that we keep our transportation staff and paras on the annual review as well, even though they're on the non-licensed side of the house. So non-licensed staff goes through a process called a quadrennial review. And it's done in these two categories. The quadrennial review is, obviously that 4-year review of particular positions. So I'm going to talk to you about each of the main components of that review process, and then I'll share which groups fall within those. So position analysis, data review, and recommendations, those are the 3 pieces, but it's our ultimate goal to maintain competitive salaries for all of our staff members. For employees in this process, this is going to ensure that their salaries remain within 5% of the average median compared to other divisions in our region and our peninsula region. The quadrennial review process, the first part being the position analysis. That's the audit of the job descriptions for alignment to industry standards and to what they're currently doing on the job. We had, this is if they are on cycle. When Bill Bowen was up here, he was talking about the clerical staff. That would be off cycle. So if we have a need to take a look at compression, or if the market calls for a review for more than one grade, then we would do that. So for the on cycle, we do this position analysis, and that is in policy to be done, finished, complete by November 1st. Once the position analysis is done, that data is reviewed. We look at, then making that decision, does the job description align to the actual work being done and the industry standard? And how does our current salary compare to those in other areas? And then do we have internal and external equity? The comparison to the other divisions, that's the external, and then internal, have we looked at people coming in at different years, and do we have that equity within our systems? Once that is complete, recommendations are developed, goes to Dr. Shandor and Cabinet for review and see if it's going to have implications on the budget. And then when reasonable recommendations are ready, it comes here to the school board for review and for approval. So this is a breakdown of the groups. We are currently, group 1 is this year. We're starting a new 4-year cycle. So the reviews we're doing now will be for the fiscal year 25. So in group 1, just to give you an idea of some of the positions, that would be our custodians, child nutrition, office clerk, crossing guards, secretaries 1 and 2. I have to take that 2 out for now after the last presentation. Office techs, and some of our trades apprentices for HVAC and electrical. Group 2, grades 13 through 16, warehouse staff, preventative, general maintenance, payroll technicians, carpenter, plumbers. Group 3, grades 17 to 27, that's where specialist area supervisors, records managers, communications associates, budget, financial analysts, and our master carpenters and electricians in HVAC fall in group 3. And then group 4, coordinators, behavior analysis, analysts, social workers, psychologists, and managers. And like I mentioned, tying in some of what Mr. Bowen shared, this is the scheduled cycle for review. But should an individual want their job reviewed, then we definitely take a look at this. This is meant for whole groups, not individuals. We still do that review. And then if we see that there's a need, then we will review categories out of cycle. So next steps. We want to continue to track our applicants. Where are they coming from? Their years of experience. That will help with the internal equity. Ongoing systematic job analysis of all of our positions, not on the teacher salary scale. That means being current with job descriptions and what does that work look like in reality. Continued alignment of job description, review, position, and that cycle as needed. And continuous opportunities for staff input, focus groups, exit surveys, and interviews, so that we make sure that we hear their thoughts in the process. And thank you for letting me present to you this evening. Do you have any questions?
I don't think I do.
Anybody?
Good, thank you.
Straightforward.
Just had a question. If I missed it, I apologize. I didn't see that there were any bus drivers who attended the February 3rd job fair. Did I miss that, or?
I don't think there were any.
No, I don't think
No,
there were.
you're right.
No.
What are
Well,
we
the
doing?
good thing is we have Jim, Dr. Carroll, we have 8 or 9 in the pipeline right now.
7 bus drivers, 2 van drivers.
Right, so that's a positive thing.
Okay.
So we didn't have any other drivers show up for that job jamboree,
Okay.
or applicants for that position.
And I just know from hearing from parents, the bus driver issues and not having enough, and so some of the routes aren't arriving when they're expected.
That's right.
Type of thing.
Yeah.
Is there a plan for how to go out and recruit these in particular?
Well, we
Ooh, we've been working on this for
It's
years.
been 10 years.
Yeah.
It's been 10 years. It's probably been longer than that.
This is the best it's been.
Yeah.
This is probably the best it's been.
last 4 or 5
The York zone is probably the largest zone for us as far as how many routes and where they go. So if when kids get sick and when teachers get sick, I think it's foolish on all of us to think that our bus drivers won't get sick. So we did have a period over the last couple months where we've had 4 or 5 drivers down in one zone. Creates a big problem for us. And basically, what that means is the office people go drive the buses. And then they're doubling or tripling or whatever that is for the routes, which is going to cause delays. So, but as far as recruiting, I believe I don't have the statistic in front of me, but we have, as far as what we've done for drivers, it's about 20. Mr. Bowen, is it 28% or 30% over the last?
In 2020, there was a 9%.
As far as raises, we're doing it again this year. So the presentation that you saw when Mr. Bowen weighed in about quadrennial, we're adjusting the drivers again. So the drivers will get that 2%, but they'll also get the 5.5%. So they'll feel a 7.5% raise. So we're doing as much of that as we can. Ms. Fairman, we've also added and worked on attendance bonuses. So we do those at the semester break and at the end of the year. So bus drivers or transportation staff that work. It used to be 100%, but I think we dropped it a little bit to make it
95%.
to make it realistic, so somebody could earn that. What we're contemplating now, I got some great feedback the other day in my non-licensed staff advisory meeting from one of the bus drivers in there. He gave a great suggestion. He said, "Look, those are great, but what if you did them every quarter, like quarterly?" Maybe the amounts aren't huge, but at least it's more attainable more often for people. So we're taking that into consideration as well. We recruit bus drivers everywhere. If you're ever driving around the county and you see any of our vans, typically on the back of our van, there's an ad that says, "Hey, we're hiring." So there's phone numbers. Our drivers are probably our best recruiters, to be honest with you. And if they do recruit a driver, I think they get a bonus if I find Mark on the street, not on the street, but somewhere in the community, and say, "Mr. Schaefer, don't you want to come and drive a bus for us?" If he goes through the training and starts with us, then I'll get a bonus as well. So we put a number of things in place to increase the number of drivers. Probably the best it's ever been, but we recognize there's still issues and concerns. My kids have ridden the bus for 10 years. My young one, I get the alert just like most parents. It says, "We're sorry, but bus whatever route number is running 20 minutes late." And I think if you're in this school division, really in any school division, you understand that's part of the norm now, unfortunately. And we know that puts parents in a crunch, especially at the end of the day. They're trying to get their kids to rec basketball, piano lessons, swim practice, whatever appointments they have after school. That becomes a challenge for everybody, but it's something we're committed to continue to work on.
And Ms. Fairman, also to help increase that piece, we're starting our own training program in-house down the transportation department. So what's happening is we no longer have to have our prospective bus drivers go out and get the training. We're providing it ourselves, and so that we can have them pass the test. So that's increasing our surplus too.
Okay. And I know I've asked this before, and if you told me an update and I've forgotten, I apologize. But I know there was the issue with the veteran bus driver pay procedures versus the brand new ones coming in. Has that been addressed?
Yeah, we've addressed that. Mr. Bowen, do you want to respond to that, or Dr. Carroll or Dr. Wrights?
I can. It's not about veteran and new. It's the difference between those that take their pay in the 10-month as they work, or those that spread it out over 12 months. And when we spread it out over 12 months, there was some misunderstanding and concern about how that is happening. But that's something that the employee chooses to do, and that's not just bus drivers. Anybody that's a 10-month employee can opt into that program. And I'd add one other thing. When we look at teachers and their substitutes, we have about one substitute for about every 3 teachers. So because we have over 300 substitutes in the pool, right? When we look at our 100 bus drivers, we have 0 substitutes. So there is no margin for error, and that's really where we have problems. We don't We have 100 slots for bus drivers. We need about 30 substitutes to have the same level of support, and the teachers will tell you there's not enough substitutes. So probably need more than that.
That's true.
Also, I'd like to add just for Job Jamboree, that was such a phenomenal event. I appreciate being invited to be there. Just want to say congratulations to all of you for just providing such a great service to our students, to all of the administrators, even us as board members. So thank you so much for doing so.
Thank you for saying that.
It was great.
And I would add, I want to commend the HR team, Dr. Wrights and Dr. Nichols' entire HR team was there, answering a variety of questions. And then we have a number of administrators that come, and obviously their interview teams, and you guys got the few of you who came to that. We appreciate you coming to support them, but also gives you a opportunity to converse with them, get to meet them a little bit. You saw two of our principals arguing over a candidate, which was fantastic. They know who they are because they're probably watching this. But it's really a great opportunity for applicants to get to know our team. Hopefully you got a sense of what that felt like and what that culture felt like. We also have, we worked with VHSL and the referees. They have a table because there's a shortage of referees for ball games. So they've come to the last two job jamborees as well. So HR team did a great job of that.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Next on the agenda is proposed changes to the program of studies.
Absolutely, and this is Dr. Cagle's favorite presentation from what she shared with us at the last meeting and when we BMOP'd her. BMOP is behavior, it's board management oversight process. So obviously we help our team and we prepare for these with reviewing data and giving each other feedback. And Dr. Cagle just shared her love of this presentation. She couldn't wait to come and present to it. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Karen Cagle.
Well, thank you. Good evening.
Great introduction, right?
It was perfect. Good evening, Madam Chair and board members and Dr. Shandor. Thank you so much for this opportunity to share an update on the program of studies. I'm going to give you a quick overview because I did present the bulk of the changes in December, and tonight is just a few additional pieces that have occurred since December. But you have a red line document and board docs that goes into a little more information. I want to start with New Horizons Regional Education Center. So in December, I mentioned that they had not approved their program guide yet. We were waiting for that. Well, now it has been approved. They have 2 new courses. They have patient care technician, which is a follow-up to the nurse aide course. And it just helps them to develop some skills and earn some certifications in the health profession. And then they also are adding an unmanned aircraft systems course. And so those are the 2 new courses that they're adding to their program. We always like to go through and see if they've made any changes to their course description as well as their prerequisites. So if you go into that red line document, you'll see some changes that we noticed were a little bit different and we want to align with their program guide. So we made those changes as well. Some additional revisions you might see is under purpose, we have added a QR code for our families and students. We encourage feedback, input, recommendations on the program of studies. So we have put a QR code that takes you to a survey that you can provide your input to the program of studies and give us some really good feedback on the classes that students are interested in or that families are interested in. And under the section for Governor's School for Science and Technology, we updated that section because they used to require a pre-admission, some pre-admission procedures where students had to go on and apply. They don't have to do that anymore. Any family can sign up and get information from Governor's School. So we wanted to align that to their new procedure, so we made that update as well. So the sections you see on this slide are sections that we wanted to put references to policy and superintendent regulations. We can't include all of those in our program of studies. We include a summary, an outline, so our parents can now have that reference easily available to go and look in more depth, get more information, more background if they need it. On this slide, you see some courses that we just made a few minor description changes. The courses haven't changed. We just wanted to align with either the Virginia Department of Education or College Board. If you're not familiar with College Board, that is the organization that we get our advanced placement curriculum and exams through. We have 32 AP courses in our program of studies, and so we wanted to make sure our verbiage aligned with the College Board and VDOE, so we made a few small changes there. Speaking of AP courses, we want to revise this is a big one here, we want to revise our Advanced 10 English course. Right now, our Advanced 10 English course is a more rigorous course than our English 10, but back last April, VDOE allowed us to substitute AP Seminar for Advanced, for English 10 if we wanted to. So we are adding that curriculum to our English 10, Advanced English 10 classes. It is a weighted credit course. It'll be a chance for our kids to get an opportunity to take an introductory AP course before they move on to 11th and 12th grade and take more courses. We are asking for some funding with this one because it does require teacher training. Each of the teachers who will teach this course will need to be trained by College Board. So before I tell you the last proposal, I want to give you a little bit of background information. The College Career and Civic Readiness Index is a measure of our students' preparedness for college and career. And so VDOE has this measure in place that we measure our graduating cohort to see if they're college and career ready. And what we ask them to do is have an experience in either advanced coursework such as AP, dual enrollment, or IB, or the student needs to have sequential CTE courses with a credential, or participate in JROTC for 3 years with a credential, or participate in a work-based learning experience or a service learning experience. So a student needs to be involved in at least one of those to be identified as college and career ready through the CCCRI index. So what we're proposing is that some of our seniors have an abbreviated schedule that 12th grade year where they're finishing up with what they need to meet graduation requirements. But we're going to ask that they've had one of these experiences prior to their senior year or sign up for one of those courses that have this experience during their senior year. They could possibly still have a abbreviated schedule. They'll just need to get this done as well. So those are all of the changes that we have, and I welcome any questions.
Quick question. How many teachers will be trained for the AP course?
So we've accounted for 10.
It's 1,000. Okay. Do you think that's going to be sufficient, or are you going to need more?
I do. We pulled the numbers. We might could possibly go with 8, but we wanted to give us a little wiggle room there.
And that 10,000 was what was budgeted
for 10
teachers.
Okay. Any further questions or anything? All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Greatly
Thank you.
appreciate that.
Karen, great job. Can't wait till next year's program of study.
Riveting.
You could breathe for a few minutes anyway. Next on the agenda is York River Academy alternate accreditation. Dr. Shandor.
Thank you. Next, we're going to do York River Academy alternate accreditation, and Ms. Lisa Beasley is going to share some information related to this topic.
Okay, so good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board, and Dr. Shandor. This evening, I will provide updates regarding the alternate accreditation application for York River Academy. So earlier this fall, Mrs. Sheffield, the principal of York River Academy, and Dr. Karen Cagle, director of curriculum and instruction, and myself met with the Virginia Department of Education to discuss the alternate accreditation options for York River Academy as they related specifically to chronic absenteeism. Drafts of the application were reviewed with VDOE staff, and feedback was provided by by the Department of Accountability. So we had an opportunity to meet with the Department of Accountability on both November 1st and November 8th to get feedback from that department. In December, the draft plan was reviewed at the December 11th board meeting, work session, and then approved during the regular meeting that evening. So in the plan that's posted this evening to board docs, updates were made to the application in January per recommendations from the Department of Education, and those are noted in red. The regulations at Virginia Department of Education state that schools and school boards may seek approval of alternate accreditation plans from the Board of Education, specifically for schools that serve a special purpose or have a graduation cohort of 50 or fewer students. York River Academy is specifically requesting an alternate accreditation calculation be considered by the Board of Education as it relates to chronic absenteeism. For the 2022-2023 school year, chronic absenteeism rate for York River Academy was at 41%. Due to the methodology of the chronic absenteeism calculation, where the number of students who exceed being absent 10% of the school year is divided by the total enrollment in the school, YRA is more significantly impacted when a student meets the 10% threshold due to their low enrollment. The plan proposes that the school demonstrate improvement for chronic absenteeism with a reduction in the rate of 5% instead of 10%. So the state's expectation is that a school can show a reduction in a failure rate or a reduction, in this case, of the chronic absenteeism rate at 10%. We're requesting that that reduction be at 5% instead. Additionally, the application is requesting that students be considered chronically absent at 20% of the school year instead of 10% of the school year. So our timeline moving forward, this will come before you at the February 26th regular meeting for approval. We will then submit it to the Virginia Board of Education, and they will review it during their March 28th board meeting. And then during their April 24th regular board meeting, they will either approve or deny the application. And at this time, Ms. Skinner or I would be available to answer any questions you might have.
What are your feelings about the approval? Does it look good?
So we would say that I think it probably looks favorable. The state actually seeked out us in regards to when they did the presentation for all school divisions earlier this fall and actually made the recommendation that we go through the process. I have to give huge kudos to Mrs. Sheffield and her staff. They've worked really hard to improve their chronic absenteeism rate thus far this year. And so we may not actually need some of the components of the application, but we did feel like it was best to move forward with the process.
I think it's just important that we have 69 students in that school, and that just
Yes, sir.
it's so easy to get there.
Yes, yes.
So easy.
Very easy to get there, and
She, in York River, in many cases, will accept students at the semester who are coming from some of our traditional high schools, and they bring their attendance with them.
Or outside the school division.
Right.
And as Dr. Chandler mentioned, on a regular high school, the chronic absenteeism comes to be how many students percentage-wise?
Was it 14, 15% or so?
Most of our high schools vary anywhere between about 14% and 16%.
Yeah, that's with 1,000 kids.
Yeah,
Right.
1,000 kids.
Right. So 69 students, there's a significant impact each time you have a student who meets that threshold.
And it sounds like from what I gathered in talking with Holly Sheffield that she works really hard to keep those kids in school. So you have this buffer there if you can get that from the state, but we're not going to get anywhere near that because she is very diligent about staying in contact with those kids.
Exactly. She, if you are absent and you have not walked in the door by about 15 minutes after school has started, your parents have received a personal phone call home if they haven't already called Ms. Sheffield to indicate why their student is absent. And she has found that that's built better relationships. but it's also provided families with resources that maybe she previously wasn't aware of the need for those resources. So it's been a huge shift and a huge growth opportunity for that building.
And Ms. Sheffield shared with us, I think was at the beginning of this year, she supplied magnets for the families of those students, so they can take responsibility for that as accountability measure at home. They go right on the fridge and they know exactly how many days they've missed and sort of where they are. So I think that was a really nice strategy on her part.
And me and Miss Quinn, we just visited YRA on Friday, and that was just a great visit. I just enjoyed it. I mean, I just have to tell her, yes.
It is.
Really
just kudos to everybody, what they're doing over there.
Well, I think it's so important to recognize that the smaller enrollment, any school, if you have an illness come through or you have issues with students who have chronic illnesses, larger populations, it's not that big of a deal. But when you have such a small enrollment, that can have a huge effect on this, an overall impact. So, hopefully this will go through and they'll be able to move on.
Well, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lisa.
And our next on the agenda is elementary attendance zone balancing options.
All right, we have saved the best for last. We're going to bring in the closer, Dr. Carroll. He is going to introduce our consultants who are here this evening. Dr. Carroll.
All right, thank you, Dr. Shandor, Madam Chair, members of the board. As you know, last summer, the division contracted with Arkbridge Consulting to study our attendance zones for elementary, our current enrollment, and residential development that will bring us future students. Tonight, Mrs. Mather of Arkbridge will share her team's findings and recommendations. Now, I want to warn you, so as to not have a 100-slide presentation. This is kind of a dense presentation, so there's going to be a lot of information on each slide. I do want everybody to know that we have the presentations from tonight. We have Ms. Mather's report and my report from the stakeholder committee. That's both on the web page and also on board docs. So that if you want to look at it in a more digestible manner, those are there, but it's the same information. And afterwards, I'll share a summary of the work of the stakeholder committee and their recommendations as well, and then review next steps. So with that said, Ms. Mather, go ahead.
Good evening, Madam Chair. Good evening, members of the board and Dr. Shandor. We are happy to be here. We've been working with Dr. Carroll, and I'm here to present what we have come up with. So we analyzed your attendance areas of all the 10 elementary schools, and we came up with alternate plans, and we work with Dr. Carroll as well as the stakeholders. So when we began, these were the objectives that were given to us by the school division. And I'm going to read them. The first one was to work with a maximum elementary school size of approximately 700 students. And we were supposed to keep the neighborhoods together as much as possible, and proximity to schools. Then assess the impact of new boundaries on feeder patterns. Then set the attendance area lines along geographic features such as roadways and waterways. Evaluate the effect of recommended attendance areas on bus routes. And then accommodate instructional programs with appropriate facility requirements. And then review enrollment trends and the effect of approved and proposed residential development as options are created. So with these goals, what we did was we gathered the data and we looked at the as-is scenario, which means that we looked at all your elementary schools, and then we looked at the enrollment for fall. And you are going to see two columns there. One is called Live and the other is called Attend. So we did an analysis on both of those. And just to specify what Live is, is all the students who are living in that attendance area. Now, they may not attend their home school, so the attend column says that these are the ones who attend that school. So we did an analysis on both. We looked at the instructional capacity, and then you can see the little color coding scheme that we have, that you can see that Bethel Manor, Coventry, Grafton Bethel, Magruder, you can see Tab, Yorktown, and you can see that all these schools are showing up in red because they have more enrollment than the instructional capacity. And on this slide, we are looking at the brick and mortar instructional capacity. So moving on to the next slide, here we are looking at additional capacity, which means we are looking at the portable capacity that you have in your schools. So here too, if you look at the little coloring scheme that we have, we still have Magruder, which is sort of over capacity, and it's in the red zone. And if you look at Dare and you look at Seaford, you look at Wallermill, these look like that they're underutilized. So looking at this, we also gathered data from 2017 onto this year fall data. And what we did was we looked at this historic enrollment data and we said, what kinds of trends are we getting? So here on the top column, you're seeing the actual capacity, and here you're seeing the additional capacity. So based on this and based on our coloring scheme, you can see that Coventry, you can see Grafton Bethel, Magruder for sure, and to some extent Yorktown. So you're looking at these, and what is standing out here is the Dare Elementary and Seaford Elementary, they seem to be, they're in the dark green, which means that their capacity, they're underutilized, and we could do better in these schools. And that was with the brick and mortar, and this is with the instructional capacity. And you can see that some schools are still in red, but regardless, Dare and Seaford and Wallermill, we could send more students there to better utilize the capacity.
And Ms. Mather, if I could interject here, the reason Wallermill looks so good is because the assumption is based on us adding portables there this summer. And so we're using those numbers ahead of time. Because right now we don't have that capacity, but we will this summer.
So if you look at it, to add on to what Dr. Carroll is saying, that currently it has 405 capacity, but by the end of summer, we are hoping that it will be up to 540. So then what we did was we looked at the new developments and see where the developments are happening and what kind of students, what number of students can we expect. So here you can see the new developments, we categorize them based on their status. So the top column is showing you, or rather the top rows are showing you the active developments, the pending developments, and the planned developments by school attendance area. So here, these are the number of units which are supposed to be developed, but some of them have already been developed and the students are already in the school. But then we have the future, where these are the future units, and then this column is showing you all the students from all the units, but this is the one that we are looking at because we are thinking that they are going to come into the system. They are not there yet. So based on this information, we expect 65 additional students. And if we look at the pending, you can see that 202 from there. And if you look at planned, it's 59. So they are coming in the future. Then we looked at where are these students, and you can see that Magruder, here we have the schools here, and you can see that Magruder has the most development, and you can see that presently these units have been built. these units are supposed to be built. So if you look at the green bar, that is where all the students are and the estimated number of students. So what you need to take from this chart is, or from this slide is, that the number of students we are expecting, the maximum number is in Magruder, which is already up to or over capacity. So then we did a summary slide on what are our current challenges, what should we look at. So when we looked at the capacity utilization, we found that Magruder, we have Coventry, which is up to capacity, Grafton, Bethel, and Yorktown. And the under capacity schools are Dare, Seaford, and Watermill. So, and when we look at new developments and trends, what we did was we looked at the historic data and we did a trend analysis. And what we do is we calculate a cohort survival ratio, which means, is our enrollment going to increase or is it decreasing? So if you look at this 1%, if you look at this graph here, this 1%, anything over 1% means there is growth. And if it was under 1%, it would mean a declining growth. So looking at this, you can see that your county, in each school, it's above 1, and so there is a positive growth in the county, in the school division. So we started to, now that we had some background information, we said, let's see what are the factors that we should use when we create these alternate attendance areas. So obviously the first one was school capacity, which was brick and mortar capacity as well as additional capacity. Then we looked at enrollment counts, both live and attend. We looked at the projections. We also looked at walking, driving distance. We looked at neighborhood subdivisions. We wanted to make sure that we have a demographic balance. And we looked at, we are going to show you the data. And also one of the factors was we don't want to unnecessarily move students if we can avoid that. So minimize change. So we developed 5 alternative plans, and we call them A, B, C, D, and E. So, and each of the plans we worked with our stakeholder committee, we showed them, we got their feedback, and then we tried to address their concerns, their questions. So what you're looking at this on this screen is Plan A, and it's an overview, it's a big picture, and if you see that the black line is showing you your current attendance areas, and the red line is showing you your proposed boundaries. So I know it's a lot to see on this slide, so I'm going to take you to the next one, but just to show you that this is the areas of change, especially for Magruder, because Magruder definitely needs relief, and then changes here. So let me take you to the next slide. A lot of information here too, but there are 2 maps here. One is the northern part of the county, and this is the southern part of the county. And here, if you look at it, these are the changes that we have listed. So from MES to WMES, which means from Magruder to Watermill, we are suggesting 100, this area, which means, oops, I'm so sorry. Okay. So here is giving you the number of students who would be affected. And here we have from which school to which school. So from Magruder, we are sending 134 students or 110, depending on what statistics you want to look at. And this is the area which we are saying, this is currently in Magruder, but we are recommending that this goes to Watermill. And of course, with the added capacity in Watermill. So here we have listed all of them, all the students from to, And here, if you look at it, in Plan A, we are saying that 601 students or 540, depending on whichever statistics you look at, those students would be affected. So we are talking about 9 to 10% students would be affected. And here, if you look at it, we have the capacity, and we are just putting the additional capacity here. So you can see that in fall, these are the percentages, and these two columns are showing the current disadvantaged status students. So currently, if there are like 40%, we want to make sure that we do not increase that or we do not drastically decrease.
Ms.
So-
Mather, if I
go
could
ahead.
define disadvantage, you mean students that are on free and reduced lunch.
Then you can see, that want to mention that Bethel Manor is one of the schools which did not get affected by any plan. So it still remains the way it is. So here, if you look at it, each of the schools, we have 5 listed here and 5 listed here. We have also a detailed presentation, which we thought was like 60 slides, so we condensed it here. But it is available, and I think it's going to go on the website that you can also look at. But here you can see the number of neighborhoods that are affected. We have 31 neighborhoods which would be affected, and the percentage is about 6.51% neighborhoods which would be affected by Plan A. So a lot of information. The only thing, each plan has a positive and a negative. So here you can see that while we were trying to fill up Dare and Seaford, we felt, that Grafton Bethel suddenly had a lot more space. And that was like one of the things that we were looking at. And the stakeholder committee was looking at it. So as we developed more, we made changes. So here we have a listing of all the neighborhoods that would be affected. So, and in the detailed presentation, we have exactly how many from each. So moving on to Plan B. In Plan B, you can see here that we made different set of changes, and we wanted to present another option so that the committee could see and provide us feedback to see which one would be more palatable. So here you can see that this is, instead of going like this, we have these changes here. And you can see that there are some changes down here. And some changes have been standard across the board, but I'll take you to the next slide and you can see. So in Plan B, the suggested changes, these are the changes between Magruder and Waller Mill. And you can see that the numbers are a little bit less. In Plan A, we were trying to provide more relief, but in Plan B, the numbers are a tad bit less. Then we are also providing relief to Magruder by taking some 30 students and putting them from here, putting them to the Yorktown Elementary School or York Elementary. So here we are looking at the numbers, and you can see that 90 to 94% is a pretty good utilization rate. And of course, if it's in the yellow range, that is perfect. So we've been trying to, especially Magruder, it's at 107% right now. And with this plan, we have got it down to 84.72%. And you can see here for Mount Vernon, Seaford, Tabb, Wallermill, and Yorktown. And here, if you look at the number of students that have been affected, still we are in the 9 to 10% range. And you can see that there are some changes. We came up here, taking from Tabb and putting it to Mount Vernon, and Coventry going up a little bit here. So these were some changes. And the number of neighborhoods that we affected was 22. And there are 476 neighborhoods, so the percentage is based on that. And you can see 4.62%. And these are the neighborhoods that would be affected by Plan B. As you can see in Plan A, we had 31 neighborhoods, but Plan B, we did a little bit better, and we had 22 neighborhoods only affected, although the percentage of students was pretty much the same. And you can see Plan C, we have kept the same change in this part of the county, and we have kept these changes here, but here we have made some changes that we are going to show on the next slide. And you can see that in every plan, we show you the middle and high school attendance areas, which means that we are looking at the feeder patterns as well. So here you can see that, like I pointed out in the other slide, this is the same change as Plan B. This is the same change as Plan B, but you can see that here, from Grafton Bethel, we are just giving a small area from Grafton Bethel to Dare. And then we are taking some of this area from Yorktown and we are giving it to Seaford. So here we are reducing the number of students that are being affected. So instead of 9 to 10%, we are down to 8%. And the number of neighborhoods affected is 21. And you can get a listing of the neighborhoods is here. Moving on to Plan D. And in Plan D, we are keeping the same in the northern part of the county, but in the southern part, we have some changes. So here, if you look at this, we have made some changes here to Tab. And we have made some changes here in Coventry. You can see these apartments here, which kept moving from one plan to the other until finally we figured out what would be the best and which would provide us with the best disadvantage percentages in schools. And the number of neighborhoods affected is only 19 here. And now we come to the final plan, Plan E. And in Plan E, what we are doing is we have some smaller changes here. And we have some changes here, but what we did was we landed up not making any changes to Mount Vernon, not making any changes to Tab, and to Bethel Manor. So here we have the numbers, and you can see how we have tried to use Dare a little bit better. So you can see that it's sitting at 90. We have provided some relief to Coventry and, of course, Magruder. And if you look at this, the only drawback that we thought was that with a smaller area being assigned to Waller Mill from Magruder, we could not provide more capacity that we wanted to provide to Magruder. So you can see the numbers here, but you can also see that we are affecting fewer students, fewer neighborhoods, and these are our 5 plans that I have shown you. And these are the neighborhoods, and we have 20 neighborhoods affected. And if you look at this chart, this is like a summary chart where we are saying in Plan A, we have about 600 by 40. In Plan B, we still have about 600, 570. And you can see how we have been trying to refine, tweak our plans so that you have a better choice. And if you look at Plan E, then it has quite a few, the lowest number of students that are being affected. And if you look at percentages, these are the percentages. So we started big, but then we tried to tweak it so that there would be a plan that you could work with. And the stakeholders' questions and comments were addressed. And if you look at the neighborhoods, it's like if you're a citizen and you want to be, you want to know which neighborhood am I going to be affected or which plan would affect me. So you can get a listing of all those 31, 22, 21, 19, and 20. And now we compare the instructional capacity. And here, this is the brick and mortar where, the current is quite red. And you can see that only Dare and Seaford have some greens. But you can see how we have made the plans such that there is somewhat of a balance. But the same with Live. But when we look at additional capacity, that is what we need to work with. Things look a whole lot better, especially if you look at Magruder. So here we have this for Magruder, and you can see how this is for attend. But when we look at the numbers for Live, you can see how we have helped Magruder by changing the attendance area. And then what we did was we looked at the disadvantaged status. And I know that you're looking at numbers and there are a lot of numbers, but we wanted to because the stakeholder, we typically do only live analysis because we know where the students live. And but the stakeholder committee also wanted to look at the attend numbers, so we did that as well. And you can compare them. Our comparison point was the fall numbers, and we give you the range size in each one of them. And then we also looked at transportation analysis. We said we need to look at if it's going to affect the number of routes. And so these are, in this column, you can see the number of routes that are currently there for the elementary schools. And then for plan A, B, C, D, or E. And the reason why we have the same number for Bethel Manor, because it didn't change in any plan. But you can see that here, these are estimated, and we came up with the estimate based on half a mile walking distance and a bus capacity of 60 students. So with this, I want to conclude and present you with what we came up with. And we developed all the plans so that they could best meet the requirements that were given to us by the school division. And each of the plans were presented to the stakeholder committee. And they had questions, they had comments, and they had concerns, which was really good because our approach is data-driven, but they were the ones who were providing us with feedback. And you can see that plans A, B, C, and D recommend changes to all schools except Bethel Manor. Plan E recommends changes to all schools except Bethel Manor, Mount Vernon, and Taft. So based on the number of students and neighborhoods affected, Plan E would be the most favorable plan. However, when we looked at it and when we looked at your new developments and the apartments that are coming up in Magruder area, we felt that Magruder should have at least 10% capacity to accommodate for any new students that would be coming in. And especially looking at the live numbers, because that is what if everyone who's living in the attendance area goes to the school. So that is the scenario that we looked at. And we felt that Plan E offers less than 10% capacity because it's not moving enough students. So, and then we also looked at the northern part of the county and the southern part of the county. And since they are kind of independent, so our recommendation is that let's move the most number of students from Magruder to Wallermill and providing more capacity to Wallermill. So we recommend Plan A, B, C, or D for the northern part of the county, which includes Magruder and Wallermill, and Plan E for the remainder of the county. So with this, I'm here for your questions.
I think all the numbers have just kind of gone like this.
So I have
I
a
warned
question. Does all of this have to be implemented at one time, or can be some kind of hybrid incorporated in a system like implementing north and south?
That is an option. The only thing that's a must right now is the Upper County.
Yeah.
And that's why we have the portable being built at Waller Mill, to make sure that we had that open to us. They are so full right now that any additional students coming out of, and the big one is there's 265 apartment units in Marquee, and Marquee has already produced students for us, so I think we would be overwhelmed at that point. So I think it's a must that we make that move.
For north.
And you'll see there's a recommendation for some phasing in the stakeholder report.
And I'm glad you brought that up. When I was being presented with this, you're right, it's a lot of numbers, it's a lot of information to digest. But in looking at it, the three main schools that we're looking at moving students to are Waller Mill, Seaford, and Dare. Waller Mill and Seaford have both had renovations to their parking lots and bus loops, and they can accommodate a lot of that extra parking. Dare has not, and it's right next to school board office, which also needs additional parking. I would like us to at least explore the possibility of putting that one off any additional students to Dare, at least for a year, if we can find the money to revamp that parking in that area.
Is that possible?
For that reason, if that's possible to do, if we can find the funds to do that. When you go by in the morning, it's just like any of our elementary schools. There's a backup on Dare Road. There always was on Seaford Road. We've tried to accommodate that on Seaford, but this would be, we fixed it at Grafton Bethel with them, redesigning where the parents come in off of Lakeside, but we don't have any options there at Dare, except bringing them onto the property there and trying to loop them around. So I would make that suggestion that we consider, at least look at that as a possibility.
The parking lot has been a challenge for years for SBO and Dare. When we have professional development, if we have 30 or 40 teachers that are coming in for PD at a certain time, or principals meeting, or an assistant principals meeting at the same time at 9 o'clock, 8:30, whatever time Dare gets into school, it's a problem. It is, and so I think that's something that as we're hearing that consideration, as well as we know what needs to happen up in the north.
Right.
It sounds like in the presentation, your original question was, is there a hybrid option, or can we phase this in? It sounds like that's a realistic
Certainly,
possibility.
you've jumped ahead a little bit on my presentation. That's good.
Well, and the consideration too, I don't know if it's been said out loud, of students that are going into the 5th grade at some of these schools, if we're making the change, can you explain how
You guys
that's?
just have to stop.
I know.
Would you like Dr. Carroll to jump in his recommendation? That may answer some of your questions.
Sure, that'd be great.
Okay. All right, first of all, I want to thank Ms. Mather and her team for doing this work with us. It's been a pleasure to work with you and Sam as we move along this. So now you've heard the 5 options and their recommendations. And as you know, I've given you updates in November and January about where we're going. So we've also had a stakeholder committee evaluating these plans along the way, and I'm now going to share their results and their recommendations. So first of all, they had basically 3 things they had to do. Was first set the criteria for a recommendation, and you know that we used our Trigo Ed processes. They evaluated and gave feedback on the 5 consultant-created division-wide plans, and they made recommendations to the board. So they settled on 5 major criteria that they were looking at: maximize the ability of the school size to align with our instructional capacity, minimize the potential for neighborhoods to be separated between attendance zones, maximize the ability to maintain a traditional feeder school pattern between elementary and secondary schools. And we didn't change any of the secondary lines. And minimize the effect of new attendance lines on bus travel times, and minimize the effect on demographic makeup of schools. So the stakeholder committee also, independent of ArcBridge's recommendation, because they did not make that actually officially until after the stakeholder committee had done their evaluation. And they favor Plan E, and for the following reasons. Number one, if you're factoring in the additional capacity that our portables give us, that all schools could remain below 95% and only one was below 85%. So we had kind of that sweet spot of 86 to 95% for 9 of the schools. It prevented separation of the neighborhoods between the attendance zones, which was a goal. It maintained the traditional feeder school pattern within each attendance zone, and it restores one Yorktown elementary zone. Naval Weapons Station has currently about 30 students that for elementary go up to Magruder, but for their secondary come down to Yorktown Middle and York High. And I was unaware of that when we started this, but they picked up on it, and that's something that we certainly want to do, and the committee was supportive of. The consultant estimated minor improvement in efficiency of bus routing, and I so hope you're right on that, because it looked like it would be minimal, but any elimination of some routes would be great. And then it provides for a slight improvement in the distribution of our economically disadvantaged students. Now, with any plan, you have risks, and the two that popped up with Plan E was that Plan E wasn't maximizing the available space at Magruder. Plan E was that one that went a little more vertical, and it stopped at the historical parkway. And so they feel like we need to grab a few more students and make sure that we use that capacity more, because the purpose is to make space for new students that are anticipated there. It also increased the enrollment, to Mr. Richardson's point, at Dare Elementary by 117 students. And right now we basically, we have insufficient parking as we do now. So 117 more students, the staff that follow those students, and then the congestion on the street really requires that we think about what we could do there. So they had 4 potential contingencies and suggestions. Before a decision is made in the Upper County, the board should be cognizant of the minimum threshold recommended by Arkbridge for student movement from Magruder to Waller Mill. Now, at this point, they didn't have that number from Arkbridge. Arkbridge tonight reported 72 students, but also to probably maximize that move as much as possible. So they wanted the board to be cognizant of that and to think about that as you think about what your decision will be. The Upper and Lower County also can be evaluated independently, as Ms. Mather shared. While the committee favored Plan E as a whole of division solution, which was what they were tasked with, it need not apply to the Upper County, was their position. And in the last two, it also might be necessary to phase in certain components of the selected plan, keeping in mind the interrelation of adjacent zones, especially in the southern part of the county. Especially noted here was the need to consider delaying immediate changes to Dare until adequate parking could be provided to serve Dare and the school board office. And it's important to note that improvement to that parking lot, I think we've had on the CIP in the past, but currently it is not there. So that's something we'd have to carve out, and that would require reprioritization on the CIP. And there was significant support for allowing rising 5th graders and their siblings who are subject to an attendance zone change be allowed to attend the current school for the 24-25 school year, contingent on families providing transportation. So I apologize if I cut you off, but you were going to do my whole presentation.
Thank you. Thank you for covering that.
So I'll close with a reminder of the next steps. We do have those reports, and one that you mentioned, Ms. Mather, is not up there, but we'll get that at least on the web page. And the next steps for this body is tonight you had the options read to you, shared with you. We will hold public hearing at the regular meeting at the end of the month. In March, we'll have the board discussion on March 11th at the work session, and then a final vote at the regular meeting March 25th. And then we'll communicate to affected families after that. And that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions.
I got a question as far as like those maps that's going to be on the public for each plan. Will they be a little bit more like interactive so people can zoom in and see their perspective, like streets, or is it going to be kind of like what we've seen on presentation, just like one picture?
They're on PDF, but the presentation that Ms. Mather refers to, there's some yellow boxes that kind of highlight it, and it gives you the number from each neighborhood, so it's a little easier to say. But like I said, she was trying to get her
No, I understand.
presentation.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering,
where
like,
we
with the rest
could,
of it.
be in a manageable number of slides.
I just want to thank Ms. Mather for her presentation with the colors and being able to identify it.
that's
It was
helpful.
very easy to follow, although the numbers kind of go in your head after a while when you see them. But it is very easy to follow. Thank you greatly for putting it in that format. It does make it easier, I know, for me, and I hope for the others here. And I think that might make it easier for parents and the families to be able to follow along to make a decision, you know, of what they would like as they reach out to all of us. Anything else? No. I don't think so. And since we've been here now over 2 hours, the chair will entertain a motion to recess for, what, 10 minutes?
I make a motion, we recess for 10 minutes.
I'll second it.
All right. Mrs. Ford?
Yes, the motion's made by Mr. Richardson and seconded by Mr. Schaefer for the board to take a 5-minute recess.
10.
10 minutes. With this many people in the bathrooms.
Mrs. Goodwin?
Yes.
Mr. Pavich?
Yes.
Mr. Richardson?
Yes.
Mr. Schaefer?
Yes.
Mr. Spearman?
Yes,
Motion passed 5-0. Thank you.
thank you. 10-minute recess. Hi, and we're back in session after the recess. Thank you very much for your patience and that needed break. The next thing, we're down into the board discussion items. And the first thing is the invocation procedures, and School Board Attorney Mrs. Melanie Berry is going to be handling that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. School board members, Dr. Shandor. As you will recall, the school board recently elected to add invocation to the board's regular meetings, to add solemnity to the meetings as the board engages in critical issues which affect York County residents. I can't say that word.
Let's say the word again.
To make it more solemn. As the school board serves constituents of all faiths, recognizes no faith as superior or inferior to others, the board would like to invite individuals, either leaders of local churches or individuals with no religious affiliation, to offer this invocation, moment of silence, or a brief statement to reflect on the gravity of the business that will be before the board. The invocation is going to be placed currently at the board's agenda prior to the business portion of the meeting, which is roughly 30 to 45 minutes after the start of the meeting. Procedures have been proposed that would be established for those offering an invocation, and these were posted on board docs earlier this afternoon. If you all had a chance to look at it, and I have passed out a copy as well. There will be a resolution then coming during the action part of the meeting if the board approves these proposed procedures. I can either go through them one by one, or I can entertain questions as to specific ones.
I just have one quick question. So are we doing a change to our policy to allow this, or doing the resolution to change it?
This is just a resolution to reflect the vote that you did last time,
Right.
and to add these procedures to it. And then these procedures will be provided to anyone signing up. And as you see in this, it'll be a rotating basis for those people
Yeah,
wishing
that's what
to
we
provide
discussed
it.
before. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. That's all I have.
All right. Mrs. Berry, actually, why don't you go ahead and go through it so that anyone listening, I know that might take a little bit longer, but
Isn't it posted on board docs?
It is posted on board docs, and it's very straightforward. It gives number one, gives the purpose to make the meetings solemn as the board engages in the issues to affect York County residents. Of course, clergy from across Hampton Roads, from any and all religious denominations or spiritual organizations are allowed to offer an invocation on a voluntary rotating basis. Additionally, groups or individuals having no religious affiliation will be able to offer a moment of silence or a brief statement to reflect on the gravity of the business before the board on a voluntary and rotating basis. The school board will publicize on the division's website that is seeking interested individuals to offer the invocation, and those wishing to sign up can call the clerk's office. There's also be a form online that they can fill out and submit. And of course, the board wants to maintain balance, so a person's faith will not preclude their ability to offer the invocation, as you do serve constituents of all faiths, and the board does not express preference for any faith and recognizes no faith above the other. So the invocation should not reference words or names that are specific to any one religion, to keep it balanced. The invocation would be directed at the board, not members of the audience, and would not include prayers, thoughts, or blessings for other groups. It's for your benefit, not for 911 call center or for emergency responders. It'll be given by one person, about 2 minutes as the maximum time period. All invocations or other statements. It's not a time to disparage other faiths, people, organizations, or beliefs, and it's not used to lobby or request funding. The invocation should be non-coercive, non-proselytizing. So words such as please pray with us, bow your heads, please stand should be avoided so as not to try and coerce anyone in the audience to participate. No one's expected to participate. No board member, no audience member, no staff member. The chair would introduce person by name and title as applicable, and on the form it asks for what title they would like to be known as. Should the school board meeting not have someone who's able to give it that week, particular day of the month, the school chair at their discretion may ask for a moment of silence. No member of the school, as I said, it's previously, or staff member is required or expected to participate. No remuneration or compensation should be given providing the invocation. And then we will provide this. It will be posted on the website, but it will also be provided to those who've signed up to remind them of the procedures in place.
Are there any questions or comments or anything? Right, so then we wait and we'll read the resolution during the action portion.
Correct.
Correct, okay. Moving right along. The next topic for discussion is the school board clerk position. There was discussion at the last meeting to separate the superintendent secretary from the school board clerk. And there were some other items along that line. I know some of the reasons to have two individuals, both of these positions, especially the superintendent secretary, has a lot of responsibility and a lot of time. And with some of the things getting done, we still don't have the minutes. And Mrs. Ford, this is nothing against you because we know you're going through everything, and trying to get everything done. But this is one of the things that we've identified. We still don't have the minutes for the January 8th meeting. And not having the minutes from that meeting for the next meeting, which is actually part of Robert's rules, and that's why I had brought this here in case anybody wanted me to read this. Usually, since we don't have a policy that says a particular date or time for the minutes to be turned in, the online FOIA, or not online, the slide presentation through the state, it actually said in there that the minutes isn't directed by FOIA, it follows parliamentary procedure, which is Robert's Rules. And Robert's Rules says that it really needs to be available by the next meeting so that we know what we're doing, what's been tabled, what's been voted on, if there's any question on things like that, so to avoid chaos. Let's see.
Even when the meeting's recorded, we need that.
Well, even when the meeting's recorded, because by having minutes are not transcripts. Minutes are what happened in the meeting, and so it's where a board member or anybody watching can just look at that one or two sheets of paper to see what occurred as a reminder, as opposed to having to go back and listen to 2
usually,
or 3 hours.
they're posted on our website, but not immediately.
Right, and we post them according to
when we approve them.
the law, and it's 7 business days from when they're approved. So if they're not approved until a month or two later, they're still not posted, and that doesn't help us as a board to remember what's going on, other than going back and trying to re-listen to 2 or 3 hours worth of what's going on.
I haven't had a problem remembering. Okay, I'm with you.
Along with that, and then one of the other things is that the possibility of conflict of interest. By design and state standards, the clerk works for the school board directly, handles the paperwork for the superintendent's evaluation, but the secretary is the superintendent's employee. So
Is that legal for us to hire a clerk?
Yes.
Yes.
It's in the Virginia code.
I only saw Virginia code where we hire the superintendent. I know we can hire
It
a
states
clerk.
in here that we have the,
if you could go ahead and read it, read what code it is.
It's under, this is the duties of the clerk.
I know we appoint.
Right, the clerk of the school board shall provide, this is their volume, this is the duties of the clerk. Supervision of the schools in each division shall be vested in the school board. Virginia's Code Section 22.1-28. The board has discretion about how to perform its duties, cites a case, and states that the standards of quality require that the board be active in supervising the division, and that it has the right to, that the board clerk actually works for the school board. So we do have
It says that, doesn't it?
authority. It's in the Virginia code.
I know, I'm waiting. I was waiting. I thought you were reading it. I was looking, that's what I was waiting for. Because I haven't seen that. I always
saw we had one
elaborate
employee.
on that?
Well, there are school divisions. They have a separate board clerk and.
Yeah, you can have a separate board clerk, but they would be hired, everybody's hired under him. He's the only one we hire. There has to be that
Are
separation.
you talking about the direct hiring of the board?
The direct hiring and reporting to.
Yeah.
Well, the reporting to, which is interesting because you actually have the reporting, just as a side, in your, or say your, but in the school board organizational chart in 2021, the school board clerk and actually the school attorney were all reporting to the superintendent. In 2022, that was,
Miss Berry has never reported to me.
it shows here that was.
No, she reported to the county.
She actually, she was the county attorney, but because she did there was so much activity over here, we needed her over here to cover full. But I've never evaluated Miss Berry until this school year.
Well, I was just going off of the 2021 organizational chart, the way it read. But then, in 2022, the organizational chart then had the clerk and legal services reporting to the school board. So that was changed. But then it was changed back on the organizational chart in 2023 to where the board clerk and legal services falls directly under the superintendent. So, I mean, the way it was done in 2022 is actually the structure of how it actually should be. So, I mean, we had it, but then it was changed. But that's just a side.
So you're proposing a separate position, which we'd have to do in the next budget year. A separate position that would just report to all 5 of us. And if they did something wrong, who would discipline them?
5 of you.
That particular individual would answer to the school board.
To the board.
Yeah.
The board as a corporate body. That type.
Now, again, this is discussion.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And
Right.
I can
No,
certainly,
absolutely.
any things you want to know, I can get you more information.
No, I'm just,
You know.
we currently have a secretary who's doing the job with the clerk and has always done an okay job. It's part-time. It's, if we wanted a board clerk, we'd have to, if you want him at our beck and call or your beck and call, whoever's, you'd have to pay him full-time for a part-time job. If you
No,
want
actually, we could put in a part-time position.
you could, but
Yeah.
you want something done right then, you got the secretary right there.
If you put in for a part-time position, then how would you handle board meetings? You don't pay them overtime if they're a .5 position?
No, we would probably include those hours within what they're doing.
So how would you do that? If it was going to be a 20-hour-a-week position, which would be part-time, then if you're at a board meeting for 5 hours, are you going to pay that person overtime? You're going to pay a part-time person overtime.
Yeah, you'd have to. I mean, because
Yeah.
some could go over.
Some meetings could go over, some meetings it would be, you'd
It
have to
would,
base
it would
it on an
depend, you would
average,
have
but
to,
Well, Ms. Mellon, in Virginia's code for employment, like now, what's the consider overtime? Is it over 20 hours or over 40 hours work week?
Well, for a full-time employee, it's over 40 hours.
Part-time?
I'm not sure for part-time.
I don't think it doesn't cover it.
Yeah,
It's
you
like,
hit a certain number, then they
it's
become
anything
full-time.
over- Yeah, it's like, I think it's like 30-something hours.
Yeah. But for
Yeah.
purposes of the discussion, it might be a good idea to maybe look at neighboring jurisdictions.
Yeah.
Right.
Get an idea of what's going on.
And I've
how
reached
they're
out to a
structured.
couple
Okay.
people to see if they could give me, and I wanted to have it for you for this meeting.
Yeah, that
Me
would-
and
that
sick
would be a
last
big
week,
help,
I wasn't
yeah.
able to
No,
get
I
it.
understand.
So
Yeah, that
that's
would
why
be
I
a big
said
help.
discussion, and I would like to present that to you because I have reached out for exactly what you're asking for, a breakdown of that and how that's done, because that's a whole lot easier to look at.
Yeah, and I know larger jurisdictions or larger boards have, 12, 14 members, and yeah, you might need a separate board clerk for that to manage that.
Or even WJCC that has 2 jurisdictions,
Yeah,
because that's Williamsburg and James City County, and they have 2 members on their board of Williamsburg and 5 of James City County.
So the rationale I'm hearing is for minutes, for getting minutes turned in on time, capturing the minutes of the meeting.
No, not just minutes, also conflict of interest. When we do, from my understanding from some of the trainings that I've taken so far, that the school board does the superintendent's evaluation.
Yep, that's right.
And then the clerk is supposed to
The board
gather.
attorney.
The board attorney does that.
Board
I've
attorney
actually
does that.
I've been gathering it and doing the summary.
So the evaluation is
Yeah,
through the
we turn it
attorney, she
into
does
her.
it. Board clerk has
Because that
nothing to
would be
do
a
with the
conflict
evaluation.
because she works for him.
Okay.
That was our concern.
Oh,
It's
yeah,
like,
no,
how
we
can
do
the
that through the
clerk
attorney.
do-
I don't think she even
Then you
sees
run
it.
into that
Well,
conflict.
so
I don't think she even
if
sees
it's
it.
not minutes, if it's, then the evaluation piece is out, then what are the other concerns and need for the board clerk? What would be the rationale for it?
It's also, in addition, focusing just on board work versus what you need as the superintendent. So any of the research we need done, any of the documentation that's needed to be done, making sure things are, at the time that we need it for our reviews so we know what's going on. Now,
So my question would be, this board has been in office since January. It's been a month. What haven't you received on time? What information, what report, what in Friday notes? I mean, there's
We usually
information
get that
that
from
we've
staff.
shared. So what are examples of what we haven't shared to justify that position? And I'm asking this question very seriously because Mr. Bowen and all of our cabinet team, we reviewed every line item and every position in a $192 million budget to
Right.
justify positions. Again, you're the board, you can make that decision. If you want to add something, add it. But that will come there's always a trade-off, just like the calendar. If
exactly.
you're going to add a day, you got to take a day. So if the
Right.
board is going to add a position from the superintendent's budget, then you're going to have to make the decision to kick something out of my request.
Well, hold off on that because our total board expenditures in the fiscal year 24 budget are $151,480 out of a total budget of $237,348,403. So that's roughly 0.00064% of that total. So while I understand what you're saying is yes, but we also know too that there are positions in that budget that we have in there that don't get utilized. So there's wiggle room, there's money there. We even addressed that, I believe, Bill, when we were talking at the budget.
Sometimes there is.
Yeah.
Sometimes there is, and I will also say, as you heard tonight, we rely on end of year dollars. We fund transport, we fund buses with that, we fund technology with that,
Textbooks.
we fund textbooks with that, we paint schools with that money. Again, if this is discussion, then I'm just sharing information out. I'm not going to go back and forth on these items, but what I will share with you is, if you're going to make an informed decision on a position
Yes.
that you want solely for the school board, then you need to take into account what you're taking that from.
Right.
That's
Right. And I guess if we could find out what has actually been spent from the line item of the school board's budget, that page that's in the budget document that we have, the binder, that what has actually been spent so far on that. And one thing to consider is that the school board, it has oversight over what's being done. That is a lot of responsibility. And it's not going to be, nickel and dimed along those lines, that we need to make sure that we're, able to take a look at everything. Is it possible, maybe, Mrs. Goodwin, to table this and gather and put together?
Just
discussion.
Yeah,
Just a discussion.
I would like just kind of weigh in.
And, gathering information
Yeah,
from everybody
right.
and.
My question is I read a couple of descriptions of the school board clerk obligations, duties, including I think what you were mentioning over there. Do we have kind of as a board the job description, what is included in those duties for Ms. Ford?
Yeah, we just posted it 2 weeks ago, and our new superintendent and superintendent secretary and board clerk is Nicole Howard. So yes, we just updated that information.
Does it have it split up? This is the superintendent secretary duties, and these are the board clerk duties. I think that's what
Dr.
Mr.
Wrights,
Hyman said.
Dr. Wrights, I believe they're listed as job responsibilities.
So overall, as opposed to divided out.
Correct.
I do have some things that from different areas. I think probably if we put together a package and identify, the full reasoning, since we've been just getting the information about it, to put that forth. Because if anything, this is the time that would be, primed to do this. Since there's going to be a split, since Mrs. Ford is retiring, and we're going to really miss you.
Yes, we are.
That if any time would happen, it would be at this time if we're going to do this, to take a
Well,
look
this
at
time or next year, we could do it either way.
Thought it would be
If we
good
want
to
to
bring
find
it up for
if we want to
discussion.
find the money, but
Yeah.
yeah, it needs to be discussed, absolutely. Because I'm curious to see legally if they would report to us directly, and I don't think they do. I think they're still going to have to report to him or whoever the superintendent is. I don't know that that's why you always have that separation, even with the county board of supervisors. They have the county administrator. That's who they hire, and that's who directs and runs the county. He runs the day-to-day operations of
the
the
clerk
county.
is not equivalent to the county administrator.
No, they have their own clerk.
The superintendent is.
Yeah, that's what I was making the comparison to.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
But but they have their own board clerk who's also a secretary over there as well. I don't know, just it's worth discussion.
Yeah.
I'd like to know the legalities of that and see what other divisions are doing and who they report to, how it works, that sort of thing. Again, I just think it would flow easier unless the clerk is overwhelmed. That position of the secretary is overwhelmed doing that job. Absolutely, certainly. But if they're not overwhelmed, then it's somebody you can just contact.
Well, there
quickly.
are also things to consider too as we look at this. For example, there's no standard operating procedure that I know of for board clerk for onboarding new board members. And that's something I think would be useful for a board, like a board clerk.
I think
We absolutely 100% have a process and procedure for onboarding school board members. We absolutely do.
There is a standard operating
Yeah.
procedure. written.
I don't know if there's an actual SOP, but I can share the documents with the board in Friday Notes this week if you would like, of our best laid intended plans for all of the information to train board members on. However, what I will say is that really depends on availability of incoming school board members as well, and how we schedule those things
You won't always
and how
need
much
it,
time. Excuse me?
You wouldn't always, hopefully you wouldn't always need it if you had to, you didn't have to turn over a board, you wouldn't need to.
We've used the same process and procedure for the last 2 or 3 elections, and we've been able to get through all that information. Again, it just depends on the availability of the incoming school board members. As you guys experience, there's a lot of information to share.
As well as there were some new things that had come on board that, it missed, like, Let's Talk wasn't there when the last one thing, so, getting that up and rolling.
I
and
still don't have Let's Talk. I
Making-
never needed it. And there weren't any contentions with the board for us to need it. We let the staff respond to
That was a
most
staff
of that.
tool.
Okay.
Okay, we're just now getting
Yeah.
reports from
Okay.
Let's Talk
because of
about board actions.
I do have a question, and is she here? Nicole, welcome. It's
she's over there.
nice to meet you and everything. However, I will say, I thought it was, at least my understanding was that hired positions have to be voted on by the board. And I don't remember seeing
Dave, would you like to take that one?
that.
So our voted position, or whenever we recommend,
Mhm.
it's our superintendent recommends those positions, and it's
Okay.
not voted on by the board, it's the recommendations, and then we just proceed forward, correct?
The positions that I bring to the board are any chief officer position, any director position, I believe associate director position, and principals.
Yep.
Those are the positions.
And APs.
We stopped bringing
doing
stopped
APs.
bringing
Oh, no,
you
they
A-
used to,
well,
that's
we
right.
stopped bringing you APs a year and a half ago because we hired like 12.
Yeah, I remember.
And we hired them in like 3 months.
Yeah.
So we couldn't, I would make the phone calls and communicate to the board, but there was no way to bring you all in. So those are the positions I specifically bring to the board. Every other position in the school division goes through the PA.
Yes.
Right.
Well, and plus Nicole wasn't a new hire.
No.
Transfer.
Yeah, transfer, okay.
And we can change that, but I mean, we'd be meeting
Yeah, no,
every
that's-
other day.
That was just.
You're not going to, you wouldn't want to change that.
So checking on that. Well, along those lines, how about if,
We'll just gather.
we'll
I'll
put
gather.
together.
And I wanted, like I
and a
said, I
report.
wanted to have
So
that.
just to summarize it,
documentation.
we're looking into the money, like where
Yes.
we come from.
Right.
So from, then we're looking for
The need.
the need.
The duties, like
The
how,
duties.
how do we, what is the current role and responsibility, those duties listed out?
Okay.
Additional, and then maybe additional duties that we see
Mhm.
that are needed,
Okay.
combined, and what does that look like? Right, so
Yeah.
gathering that information.
Yeah, what are you hoping to accomplish by doing this?
So that we can, well, one of the things I talked about was having, but Dr. Shander, I was under the impression there was no formal standard operating procedures, like something that's written out that says, okay, this is, but
What
I'm
you
being
cover
told that maybe there is.
For onboarding?
Yeah, for
Okay.
like onboarding,
That's
or
every 4 years.
for the standard operating, or excuse me, a standard operating procedure for the board clerk itself, like, okay, what are the duties of the board clerk? What does the board clerk specifically do?
I think
And if
it's-
you
And
have
there's
a new
a lot
person,
of, research and everything else, any research that any of the
Research.
board
Okay.
members.
But what was the
want.
conflict of interest thing? I don't understand that.
That was the thing where who does the evaluation on the
Oh, okay.
Who
superintendent.
does the evaluations?
But it's the
along those lines.
the attorney
Right,
that
so
does
that
that.
was-
As well as if there is any, conflict of interest, at any time, which way does it go? Does the
Aren't we all on
clerk
the same
serve the
team?
board?
Yeah, we are, sure.
But we can still have differences of opinion, things like that, and that's fine. So how about if we'll move on from that, and we'll put that together.
Melanie, that very helpful.
Oops, I'm sorry.
A second. I would say also, when we're looking into the money and all that, we also want to look at, the clerk also is the holder of many records, and all that's going to be confidential. So those are normally housed at the school board office, so we'd have to look at, in those areas that have it as a split position, how is that handled? Because that type of thing would be, we need to make sure we keep all that in-house.
Right.
And not, if they're part-time, where are they, that type of logistics.
Things like that would stay in-house,
Yeah.
that would not.
Yeah, I would like to, is the conversation over? I'm sorry. I don't know if we're moving to the next topic or not. I don't.
We're trying to move.
We're trying to wrap it up. Go
I
ahead.
just, you mentioned a conflict of interest related to the superintendent, to my evaluation and how we do that. I would want to make sure I'll voice this to the attorney, that if the board hires a 20-hour, or not 20-hour, part-time, full-time, whatever, for the board clerk, then I would want to put some procedures in place, because I certainly wouldn't want to be put in a position to have to evaluate the person the board hires. Does that make sense?
Be the board.
Or supervise that person. So I think that there needs to be there needs to be some caution taken, or not caution,
Well, I think
detail oriented.
even if it's legal.
Well, to me, it just needs to be aligned. If we're going to worry about the conflict of interest for my evaluation, then I'm equally as concerned about the conflict of interest the other way.
Right.
Because if you're going to hire somebody, there's inherently there's going to be a conflict of interest
Oh, yeah.
with if you go that route. So
Absolutely. You're trying to run a division, they want to do this, and you go, what are you doing? They go, well, board told me to do this. And they're just off doing their own thing.
I think
That's
that
not concern, yeah.
Be my concern. I've seen it, but I don't know if it's ever going to happen.
Like you said, we need to
Yeah.
bring it all in and look at it.
Things like
check
the
any
summary of the
legalities.
duties would be
Right.
very clear. Like I think we need to just summarize those
Yes.
and
All
see
right.
with secretary and clerk where they're overlapping, where they're separating.
Right.
I want to evaluate the financial commitment that we can that we have to make for
Yeah, there's
gonna
a lot
make.
of.
And if we can also
So,
find out, how that line item of what is budgeted
Yeah.
for school board activities, the actual school board page that has everything written down, what has actually been spent since, we're into the fiscal year 24, obviously, and getting ready to move into the fiscal year 25. So where do we lay in funds? Have we used up all of that money, or have we only used half of it? How is that? And if there's any way to find out, maybe in the past 2 years, so we have a 3-year track to see what has actually been spent and covered along that would probably help us if that's possible.
So what's the request? Does the request find a 3-year trend? Does the request find the data now? So you said a lot there. So what is the request of staff so that I could provide an accurate direction for
Understood.
Mr. Bowen to do this? I need what information do you want from us? Because typically when we went through the budget process, we're first identifying the need. We're not identifying the money, we're identifying, is there a need for this position and why?
Right.
For example, the 3 literacy paraeducators, or the literacy specialists, or an ACC, or any of those types of, we're identifying the need first, not the money.
Sir, if we can find out what has actually been spent, so that we know if there's any money in there, or if we have to look somewhere else, if we decide to do this.
Sure.
That would help.
Yeah.
And if we could also find out for the previous 2 years, what was budgeted and what was spent.
Okay, so my question would be, we are crossovers tomorrow.
Right.
So my entire finance and budget team is working on a budget. How much time do you want them to spend on that? Or do you want them to wait until you bring information back, meaning research, et cetera, about the need for it, or the roles, responsibilities? Allison and Beth work really hard with the budget. Tomorrow's crossover, which means a lot of numbers are going to change.
Right.
These guys have worked all weekend to put the budget together. So I'm asking the question for a priority. Do you want them to stop doing that and do this? Or do you want us to wait until you bring this information back, and then we could pull that information then?
And I think as a new board member, that's something I had to realize, that when we ask a request like that, sometimes we're not thinking, and I wasn't as a new board member many years ago, do you want us to stop what we're doing because this is what we're doing here, or how important is this? Well, I really just need to know this question. Oh, well, the answer to that is this. A lot of times it's a quick phone call.
Right.
But again, when we put staff under pressure to do a lot of that stuff, it causes a lot of disruption in their daily
Right,
daily
and I know
duties.
with the budget.
And
going
I was
forward
bad
to
about
do
that in the beginning too. 'Cause
Yeah,
I
no.
didn't know.
Yeah.
You know,
I did too.
Yeah, we all did. But it's a learning curve too on that.
absolutely. Well, I appreciate that. And
So to answer your question, it's no, not right now.
Yeah, we're not gonna do that.
Give me a couple weeks, I think we can work it out.
Yeah, there you go.
But with crossover and everything else that is sort of hitting us, especially the budget team, I want to make sure I support them and make sure that they continue doing what they're doing so they can continue, because basically a new calc tool is going to come down, correct?
Yeah.
And when a new calc tool comes down, his, not his blood pressure, but our stress levels go up.
I know
So
you-
if there's another report on top of that, so, you know, maybe the March work session, we can have a conversation again, and then we
Okay.
can, because we have time.
That's what you, yes.
Yeah, we have
time.
time.
Okay.
I
Thank
know
you.
this isn't a quick process, that's why I decided to wanted to
Sure.
bring it up on the earlier end, because I know this is a process, okay?
Right.
So we have time, and that's fine.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. Goodwin. Next topic is discussion regarding board leadership and direction.
So, Madam Chair, I'd like to begin this discussion. I had to reflect back on why I became a school board member and why I was running for school board. And I reflected back on the answer I made to a group during this past election. And I was running to keep the schools the best in the region and the state, and currently we're ranked #1 in the region, #3 in the state of Virginia. And I want people to continue to move here because of our schools, because of how good they are. How can we attract teachers? One of our best recruiting tools is through Dr. Shandor hiring the best of our administrators at schools. A lot of times they'll bring those good teachers with them when they're hired. We rely heavily on working conditions in our schools, and we have data from surveys that are done yearly that support it. But what really concerns me majorly is that board members have been notified by our board attorney that the board may be liable because of retaliation claims by the superintendent. This could open the board and the division up to possible litigation, and I'm seriously concerned about that. That litigation could cost the division and the board money that really should be used for our students. There's little communication with the board leadership. I have had a couple emails from you, Ms. Fairman. I appreciate the couple that I've had. But for example, when we talked about this, the three of y'all had this document here as a good example. I'd probably find more. Were you included in getting a copy of that, Mr. Schaefer?
I apologize, I just got that today.
Well, yeah.
Sorry.
You know, if we could just be included in conversations.
Yeah.
Yeah, if we could pick up the phone and, hey, here's what I'm looking at doing, and we could have some discussion on the phone individually. You know if you're going to have my support or not. You may have it, you may not. I don't know. It helps on that one-on-one dialogue to really work together. I think what this board needs more than a retreat. We do need a retreat. We need it bad. We haven't come up with board norms and protocols or our
Standards of behaviors.
Yeah, standards of behaviors. We haven't done any of that. But I think what we need more than that is mediation. We really need mediation between the board and the superintendent, because that's the only way we're going to work things out. And
If I can just say one thing, there is nothing from my end. I am not doing anything in retaliation for anything that's happened in the past. And Dr. Shandor, nothing is personal. It's the position of superintendent and reestablishing that the school board is its own entity and follows that, we're the elected officials from the voters. And then the superintendent, it's what's on the organizational chart kind of thing.
It's always been that way.
It is, trust me, it is nothing personal at all. And I know you may feel otherwise, but I have not felt anything with retaliation or anything. I'm sorry if some of the things when I first came in, I said them a little sternly, and I've apologized numerous times for those.
Well, like I said, there just appears to be consistent and constant conflict with the school division staff. The citizens are even responding to it. They responded at our last board meeting, and it's creating a harmful perception that the school board, and it reflects on the division. The board chair can't even communicate with the superintendent without a staff member present. I used to, when I was board chair, I would contact him at least daily, maybe every other day, sometimes several times a day, about different things, or try to come up with whatever to get his perspective, what he thought. Okay, and I'll listen to what he thought. Sometimes I would agree, sometimes I wouldn't agree, and we would move on from there.
Well, that was not my decision. Dr. Shandor made that decision
through his attorney. He did.
And that's one of those things. And regarding the people speaking at the meetings, and I understand we'll have differences of opinions with a lot of the citizens out there, but 29 29 to 35 people saying things like that don't counteract the thousands who voted for us. Thousands who voted for me.
Yeah,
You
and
know,
there's 5,000 that voted for me.
You,
You're right.
You have to look at that, yes, I will have differing opinions from people I work with, I'll have differing people.
And the opinions are okay, absolutely, absolutely.
And so,
But-
just because a certain number of people have come to speak, doesn't necessarily they're speaking for the entire division or the entire county. You know, that's just one of those things that we can't deny the election.
No, you were elected.
And,
I have no problem
You
with
know,
that.
and it's
I have
just,
no problem
it's
with that.
one of those things that the voters resoundingly voted for change. And that's what we've been working on implementing based on that. It wasn't that we won by 1 or 2 votes or votes of 10.
Then they'll vote me out the next election then.
Do you know?
for not going with all the change. I mean, I'm good with change.
No,
I'm good with some
yeah.
change.
And that's-
But some
and
of this I don't always agree with.
Well,
And-
it's just like right
But-
now, we can have a discussion
Yeah.
over things and disagree.
But when you send people to videotape a family life education and tell people, and they're part of a militia group, which you said you weren't part of that, but
Yeah.
they were part of a militia group. They were part of it. It's all come out on video. I
and-
watched it all. I saw it all. And they said, oh, we were sitting here by Miss Fairman, and they got the cameras up.
No.
How do you think that looks for the staff?
Well, and
The perception is,
Okay.
wow, way out.
Mr. Richardson, wait. Okay, I will not allow you to label me with that.
You said you weren't a part of that.
No, I am not a part of that. Absolutely not, and I do not support that name being changed, and that was news to me
So
when it was.
he lied when he said you sent him there.
Okay, well, no. What I
You
had.
didn't know.
Okay, you're separating two things. The individual who said, I had no idea he was part of the, what was saying
Militia
with the
group.
militia. Had no idea about that. There were several citizens who, when they found out about the family life, I asked them, I said, I can't go. Can you please go? I'm looking at it's an open meeting. And if it's an open meeting, then it's therefore open for citizens
And what was
to
the
see.
purpose of that? What was the purpose they wanted to go for? They didn't have kids going through family life. If they
Anybody
did,
in the
they could have opted out.
They don't have to have kids.
They can have a right to
tax
know.
dollars are paying
Absolutely,
for it.
absolutely. It comes from the state.
Right,
So,
but
like,
they,
why would you
I'm
not
just
say
saying, you say, well,
They
what
don't
was
have
their purpose?
kids, why would they come? Like,
Right,
what's the purpose of them?
Right, because that's the purpose was to inform parents what we're teaching.
Their grandparents.
Okay.
Some of them were grandparents.
But
and some
I
of
don't
them were
raise my kids, my grandchildren. I
Right.
don't raise them. My son raises them. He makes those decisions.
But the problem with this was that you had directed the superintendent,
I
okay,
know.
as I said before, I want to know in 15 minutes, this was an,
And I apologize
wait a
for
second,
that.
let me finish.
Yeah.
It was 2 hours away, okay, was when this event was going to happen, okay? You told basically the school board office to jump through hoops to get a video crew over there to videotape it, which is kind of weird seeing how it came from VDOE, from Youngkin's VDOE, and was approved by us last year, has been posted forever on the website, and anybody could go. I mean, why did that have
And they
to
have
be
videos
videotaped?
all the time.
And
then
I'm
the
sorry.
counselors that are in charge of it, yeah, they are freaking out, as I would be too if I was a school counselor. You know, having these people show up. Yeah, Linda Fairman sent me, and they're videotaping them. I mean,
And that's my mistake for how I presented it to them. It was not intended to be that way. I have written letters to the guidance counselors.
Thank you
that
for
is-
doing that.
Yes.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
And they're handwritten. That was not the intent at all. So if we can please move on from that, we need to be focused on what the students need for student achievement, for the academics, to make sure we're
Absolutely.
being fiscally responsible
Recognition.
and being transparent. And in doing all of that.
And I will just add a couple things. One, there was no law broken, there was no policy violated, and while it may not be for counselors, and I do understand that having been one, Virginia is a one-party consent. So there was no law broken.
No laws were broken, no.
There was no policy
But if you were an
violated.
employee, how would you feel?
Well, it would be a little upsetting, but here,
Exactly.
but let me tell you something. If you have nothing to hide, there shouldn't be something to worry about. If I don't have anything to hide and
there
I'm
shouldn't
just
be.
presenting
There
my
shouldn't be.
information,
There shouldn't
Well,
be,
why am I
but you
gonna
want
get
support of the
sued?
board. I mean, if a phone call to them to say, hey, there's gonna be some people there, they might
I'm not
videotape.
arguing maybe
You know,
the
that would have been nice. A
delivery.
little heads up would have been
I'm
really
not
nice.
arguing the delivery. I'm not arguing
Yeah.
how if we role played it back, how could we tweak that, okay? But I'm just saying, let's look at it for what it is. No law broken, no policy.
It's poor leadership is what it is.
It was just a different way to
Judgment,
execute
it's a
it.
bad judgment on it. And
Okay.
I
Okay.
think like, that I did listen to that program as a parent. I went through it and I thought it was very interesting and educational. So I appreciate the effort on the whole program. And I think like,
And the people who were there,
participants that said it, that
It was welcome.
was welcome. And I could 100% understand and see our staff, how they felt. And I think I would be very intimidated as well.
It's almost
If
like you're
somebody's
looking
come
for
to me,
something.
and, exactly, I would not be I wouldn't be comfortable with it, as Miss Kim was saying, like Goodman, that yes, if you have nothing to hide, I understand those things, but still it's intimidating having the camera in your face, especially unexpected. So I would personally like to apologize for actually to our counselors as a school board member, for what they went through. I hope it's not going to happen that manner again.
That's, now knowing different things and what needs to happen, we can move on. I've apologized numerous times and it's still sincere. I'm not going to, do that. So if we can please move on from that.
Well, I just had a couple more.
Okay.
Okay. I truly think that a change in the leadership of the board is needed to unify the board, instill confidence and trust in the board by both the public and staff, where it is clearly not present now. You say 35 or so people showing up at the meeting, couple that with all the let's talk. I mean, it's compared to the past, this has been a tsunami, okay, of discontent that has come forward. And then I decided to check, I asked about FOIA numbers, and I saw that Mike Peterson, he holds the record for last year. He FOIA'd the school board 61 times, and then when I saw that he was one of your donors, I'm going, well, that's not a good look.
Okay, I have not asked him to FOIA anything.
Let me finish. I'm talking about perceptions, and I'm talking about the public. Going back to that one about the filming of the people with the family life. No, it's not illegal. No, it's no laws were broken. However, what is the perception of the public? Perception of the public when someone has sent a video, and was sent by the chairman of the school board of York County. That carries a lot to counselors and teachers and everything else. The question was asked at the last meeting why there were so many principals there. And do you remember what the answer was?
Not verbatim.
They're scared. They're scared for their jobs because of what is going on this board. I will say that that I don't feel like I am part of the board, all right, simply because we're not included in any of the decisions. Like all this with the board clerk and everything, it's like, oh, we want to do this. Well, what's the need? Well, we need to do this. Well, why when it's not been done in 20 years? I mean, it's not a problem, so why do we have to fix it? I have not heard anything come out of the meetings as far as what's good for the children, what's good for the parents, what's good for the staff of York County School District. Okay, I can tell you this, that I love this school district, I love York County, and I don't want to see it run into the ground. And I think that if things continue the way that we're going, it will be a train wreck, and this county will not be number 3 anymore. I think we will lose some fantastic upper level management. I think we will lose down to the teachers. And in this teacher shortage time, it's going to be impossible to fill those spots. I'm sorry, I'm just speaking my heart here. I mean,
I understand.
It's bothered me to that point, and in 65 years, I've never been bothered that much.
I understand. And Mr. Pyavich was with me when we had the agenda meeting for this. And the first thing out of my mouth was, can we clear the air? I'm not looking to fire Dr. Shandor or anybody else. I know some things were said and, during the campaigns and things like that. But even going back to that, I said, I need to look at contracts. I'm not going to say I'm going to fire anybody. When you're put on the spot, during a campaign, things like that happen.
Would you
And
be in agreement?
I'm on record right now. I'm not looking to fire anybody.
Would you be in agreement to the board going into mediation, or at least attempting mediation? If
What mediation are you talking about?
mediation with the superintendent to get rid of the elephants in the room. We just talked about one of them, all the issues we're having. If we can sit down and discuss these and get them all out in the open, I think it'll make for a more a board that'll work together.
Formal mediation with.
Oh yeah, with a mediator. Yeah, just instead of trying to go to litigation.
Well, yeah, I don't see the need for going to litigation. I'm not looking to fire anybody. I'm not retaliating for anything.
I don't see the need for that either, but I think the mediation would be the only way to try to circumvent that. But that's just my suggestion. That's up to you, to the
How about
rest
if
of
you
you.
present it, since, I'm not familiar with it, if I could get, what mediation actually
It's typically
entails.
someone who's neutral, a retired judge or somebody that none of us knows. They'll come in and we'll discuss the issues and discuss what the problems are. With communication, with whatever we think there may be, and we'll get it resolved, hopefully through mediation. Maybe you can explain a little more, Counselor, since you deal with more of the legal aspect about mediation, that typically a lot of cases are sent back to mediation that become litigation to alleviate civil suits.
In a lot of civil suits, mediation is a requirement the court puts on the parties. And it is confidential. It can't be used in litigation. What's discussed in mediation cannot be used in litigation. So it would be a subject of a closed meeting because it's confidential. It'd be not open to the public. It's one of the alternative dispute methods. School boards are not allowed to arbitrate, which is binding, but mediation is non-binding.
Just my suggestion.
Dr. Shannon, how do you feel about that proposal?
This is a board discussion. I'm gonna stay out of it. That's okay.
I understand.
Thank you.
All right. But if, Mrs. Berry, I guess, if you could put together, proposal for that?
Yeah, I mean, is everybody in agreement with that? We don't have to have a vote, I don't think.
I
Just-
don't object to mediation.
I
think
agree.
mediation is good.
I agree with that. We need to have the group.
And I think
Yeah.
if that
Retreat.
clears the elephants in the room and
Absolutely.
everything out,
Yeah.
then it's a positive.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think the discussion tonight has helped somewhat, but there's a lot more work to be done. That's just the tip of the iceberg.
All righty.
So,
Ready to move on?
Well, I guess my question is, who has this discussion helped, Mr. Richardson? Has it helped the five of you, or has it helped the 2,000 employees that are concerned and watching
Well,
this with the team
it's
in
a
the
several
room?
step process.
Okay.
It would help us mediate with you to work, so the board can work together and you can work with the board, because if we're not working together, you can't work.
Right.
And you can't get the employees to work the right way. I'm sure you've been inundated, I would think, with employee concerns over the actions of the board over the last month.
I have.
I've heard it in the community. I haven't heard it from you yet, but I've heard it from the community. So I'm sure you have. And I think that's the first step, is to get the board unified so we can work with you and then smooth things out and get the employees back on board, because this place is becoming a train wreck.
So what I'm hearing is what you said with mediation, though the mediation doesn't involve Dr.
It does. It does.
But you just talked about getting the board, you talked about the board here as a separate entity, so. Is there something different in that?
No, it's all the same.
Okay.
No, it's all the same.
I just want to make sure we're talking about two different things.
No. Well, it's kind of a process, I think. I think it's a step process. But I've never been through mediation before, legally or anything like that. But I've heard about it, and I just think it's a good thing to get things aired out, a good way to get things aired out. Whether it'll work or not, I don't know, but we got to try something.
I have no problem with that.
No, I have no problem, and I'm willing to work with anybody. You know, that's not a problem with me. I'm not refusing to work with people or anything.
Not at all.
Okay? Anything else? Thank you very much. I guess the next thing is consideration of approval of the invocation procedures.
That's the action item.
Yes.
So that's,
Do we have a resolution number?
Yes.
I don't see it on here.
This one.
It's this
There's
one
no
that
number.
Mrs. Berry passed
Yeah,
out to
she
everybody.
She passed it out.
Yeah.
You have it. It's
Right,
right
that's a number.
There was no number on there.
Yeah, that's
There was no resolution number.
So, Madam Chair, I would move to approve the resolution regarding the invocation procedures as was discussed earlier.
I'll second.
The motion has been moved and seconded to approve the procedures for invocation based on the resolution. Is there any further discussion? Mrs. Ford, if you could take the vote, please.
Yes, the motion was made by Mr. Richardson and seconded by Mrs. Goodwin to approve the invocation procedures as outlined in the above stated resolution. Mr. Pyovic?
Yes.
Mr. Richardson?
Yes.
Mr. Schaefer?
Yes.
Mrs. Goodwin?
Yes.
Mrs. Fairman?
Yes.
The motion passed 5-0.
Thank you very much. Now I have something else on here, consideration of approval of a motion regarding board leadership and direction. There was no motion. So we'll move on. Mrs. Berry
I
is...
was going to make a motion.
Oh, okay. Sorry, Mr. Schaefer.
All right, yes, I move that Ms. Fairman be removed from serving as a board chair. She has lost trust and confidence of both board members and the public, and that Jimmy Richardson succeed as board chair for the remaining portion of the year. As Kim Goodwin, current vice chair, cannot serve as chair, as she has also had loss of trust and confidence of the members of the public. Now, what I mean by that is that I think that Jimmy could take us into his leadership. I have no problem with you being board chair next year. I think learn from Jimmy, be vice chair, and then come off after that. I just don't see, I mean, unless we get mediation very, very quickly of this being, this board being cohesive.
Okay, is there a second?
I second.
Is there further discussion? Mrs. Ford?
Yes, the motion was made by Mr. Schaefer and seconded by Mr. Richardson for the, to replace Linda Fairman as board chair and approve Jimmy Richardson as board chair for the remainder of the school year as the reasons stated. Mr. Pyovic?
No.
Mr. Richardson?
Yes.
Mr. Schaefer?
Yes.
Mrs. Goodwin?
No.
Mrs. Fairman?
No.
The motion failed. We had 3 noes and 2 yeses.
Thank you very much. Moving quickly on, we're into policy first reading. This is the first reading of the amendment to policy BDDZ. That's a mouthful. Agenda format of the York County School Board Policy Manual. Mrs. Berry.
There are no changes from last month when you did the discussion.
Okay. I do have a question because I know part of what has been read by the previous clerk, or not clerk, the previous chair from the previous board, 2 different chairs, that it was always read that the citizens speaking can only speak directly to the school board. You cannot call someone out individually or anything like that. Now, that's not in the policy, so I didn't know where that came from because that was always in the statement that was read, the policy, but there's a legal issue with that.
The board can't limit negative comments and only accept positive comments. The
language that was read was the comments are to be directed to the board and not to individuals. So you're not speaking directly to one board member or to someone in the audience. It's to be to the board, because it's public comment to the board. So that's the intent of what the language read was, just so that's not, the comment is directed to the board as a whole.
Right. The question that I had with that is under Virginia Law 22.1-79, powers and duties of the school, and this comes from the Virginia School Law Desk Book, which I know you probably have a copy of it. It actually says, and it's under the, sorry about this, opinions of the Attorney General, and it says rules of school board restricting speech at public meetings. Certain rules of school board restricting the speech of speakers at public meetings violate the free speech rights of speakers. The board may not constitutionally bar speakers from discussing personnel issues or identifying individual school employees or officials during public session. And says, see opinion of Attorney General to the Honorable Richard L. Rick Morris, member, House of Delegates, and it gives the other information in there.
Correct.
So we're really not.
Well, that's content. We cannot control content. And we're not trying to control content. We're trying to control who it's directed towards.
It's a suggestion
Yeah,
too. The reading is a suggestion. It's not in policy.
Right, and so that's one of the things in here, because, or identifying individual school employees or officials.
You can identify. Your comments are directed to the board, and you could say, this person is horrible, blah, 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 but you're directing your comment to the board. So you're not restricting content, because that is a violation of free speech.
Right.
You're just, this is for any comment, whether it's good, whether it's bad, doesn't matter. It's directed to the board. So it's a procedural thing, not a content.
It's directed to the board, but someone can say, you know, I don't like what this particular board member is doing.
Correct.
Okay. Because in the past, it was always you couldn't say.
Doing it to the whole board, not to
Right.
special members.
Right. Along those lines. Okay. So I was just getting clarification on that, because it doesn't change the policy, because it wasn't in policy, and I didn't know where that was coming from on that. So with the first reading, it's basically just the first reading of it.
Correct. It's just to see if no changes were made, and if there are any additional questions as to the change in the format.
Okay. Is there any question regarding, and this one was putting the invocation before the business meeting. All righty, so that's the first reading. Going on to number
We already
6.
did that one.
No, this is BD. This is the one that we.
Wait a minute.
Don't state their address.
Sorry.
This is the next one is what you're talking about.
I thought she just read BDDZ, the first reading.
BDDZ is
The agenda format.
Oh, format
This one.
first.
Yes.
Yeah, the agenda
Okay.
format. It's all those BDs and all the other
Public
things put in there.
participation. Gotcha. I'm with
Okay,
you. I
so
see.
that was putting invocation before the business meeting.
Gotcha.
That's that one. This one, number 6, is consideration of discussion and expedited approval of policy BDDH/KD.
Sure.
Trying to say it because the B's and the D's all sound together. Public participation at school board meetings. And it's regarding removing the statement of requiring the speaker to give their full address.
Correct. The proposed revisions do remove the requirements of providing an address for those wishing to address the board, both when they sign up to speak and when at the podium. The sign-up sheet will only require the speaker's name and topic, and not their address. And at the podium, speakers will be asked to state their name and either the York County election district which they live, or they may not know that, the area of residence where they live prior to commencing their remarks. I would recommend approval of these changes. It's up for expedited approval, so that means it skips everything's condensed into one review. So that
Which is just, it's
today.
now.
Yes.
Oh, immediate.
Correct.
And this one's actually been on my radar, and it's bothered me for over 2 years, when I actually spoke at a school board meeting here and was asked to give my address, and I said, I have a problem with a safety issue with that, because now everybody hearing knows I'm not at my address. And anybody watching online, as well as someone maybe not liking what I say and doing something to my house. In addition, since I taught here, I know we always taught students that don't give personal information over the internet. And since we're live streamed and it goes on board docs and you can watch it on YouTube, it's on the internet. So it's protecting not only the students who speak, it protects the staff who speak, faculty who speak, and just the general citizens who speak.
Yeah, I brought this as a concern at our agenda setting meeting with Mr. Payevich and Ms. Fairman, and then I sent the board an email. The reason why I requested this to be expedited is because we had a FOIA request from a community member who asked for specific staff members' names and positions. So apparently this person wanted to know where these people work. So that's very concerning to me as superintendent, and I brought that to the board's attention because it's my job, if anything, to keep them safe.
Right.
So that's why I want our staff members to hear this evening, that I requested this be expedited tonight.
Absolutely.
And that would also mean that only York County people could speak.
No.
Not unless you specify.
The issue with that,
Clearly state their names, the York County election district or area of residence.
Or area.
Well,
We've never limited it to York County residents.
the problem with that would be people that pay tuition that come to school here. I got to thinking about that.
Yeah.
I don't think we should limit.
You have staff members who also bring their children
Right.
to other districts, so
Yeah,
that
that's
may
not
be.
limited, right?
Yeah, I was thinking about that
I think
too.
all you need to do is say Yorktown District 5 or Yorktown Tab area.
Right.
Or maybe you could just amend the card and put that as an option to check or circle. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you put
Yeah.
Grafton, York, Bruton, whatever, whatever they know they can either circle or check.
Yeah, it's easy enough.
That would be fun. Is there any further discussion on this?
No, not at all.
All right, Mrs. Ford. Oops.
We need a motion.
Oh, we need a motion.
Motion first.
Sorry about that. Oh, it's really late.
So,
I move that we accept the
Approval.
Approval of policy BDDH/KD.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Schaefer, seconded by Mr. Richardson, to approve the expedited policy approval as stated. Mr. Payevich?
yes.
Mr. Richardson?
Yes.
Mr. Schaefer?
yes.
Mrs. Goodwin?
Yes.
Mrs. Fairman?
Yes.
The motion passed 5-0.
Thank you very much. And not seeing anything further on the agenda, the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn?
Second.
I don't think we have to, do we, once we're at the end.
Yeah, usually you get to the end, but it's formality.
And may I just congratulate you on making this the shortest meeting we've had yet.
It's short. I appreciate everybody's work and seeing everybody.
Thank you.
And I look forward to